He says that, but nobody knows. A lot of people.
All right, Michael, we're ready.
Thank you, guys ready?
Yep. Okay, welcome to today's NBAR meeting. We'll go ahead and open up for public comment. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak to a subject that is not on today's agenda?
On today's agenda. Okay.
Okay, if you want to approach the podium, not on today's agenda.
No, is that okay?
Yeah. So just go ahead and introduce yourself for the record and
How's that? I don't know what to do. Is that better?
That's good.
Okay, thank you. Not a very good public speaker, so I'm going to read this. It'll take about a minute. Well, first of all, good morning to the NBAR and staff. Thank you for allowing us to have a comment here. My name is Carol Bloom, and I am a resident of Los Alamos. I'm here today on behalf of over 70 residents of our community, and would like to make a statement and pose a question to you, to the board and the planning staff. On November 17th, NBAR first heard a presentation by Mr. Jansen, the owner of the property at 365 Main Street in Los Alamos. My guess is you will remember it as virtually all of you liked the presentation, but were strongly of the opinion that this was ill-suited for our small country town. Our concern is that in conversation with Kathleen Volpe, a rather assertive person from the Santa Barbara Planning and Development, we have been told that the building permit will be granted and that NBAR will never be seeing Jansen's presentation again. And we would like to know why not. Could it be because Ms. Volpe will be overseeing this project herself, which basically makes her an employee of the participant? No other oversight except by Ms. Volpe. We think that's outrageous, ridiculous, and frankly, very sad for our community. We are here asking a fair question as this situation affects our whole community, given this project's enormous size and architectural style, both of which are so out of character with Los Alamos. We are finding it difficult to have our voices and concerns heard and want to go on the record saying that as a group, we are fully committed to appealing this project. We will fight it. We will contact the news media. We consider you to be one of the only options available to us so that our town isn't subject to anyone just building anything they want without the professional oversight that we've counted on you for. We know you do not make the decision about what is presented to NBAR, but we're wondering why not. Thank you for listening. We would appreciate your comments and thoughts.
I'm Jenny Moretti, also from Los Alamos, and I echo Carol's plea to have NBAR review the Jansen Divine project prior to the permit being issued. According to the Santa Barbara County, the reasons for this board is to prevent the building of single-family dwellings that are inappropriate or could adversely affect the desirability of the immediate and neighboring areas. In addition, it is supposed to conserve the value of buildings and encourage the most appropriate use of land within the portion of that county. It is my opinion, as well as at least 70 of our neighbors, that this project will adversely affect the desirability of our neighborhood and potentially lower our property values. We feel it is not an appropriate use of the parcel, and it clearly goes against Los Alamos community guidelines. I understand the role of this board is only advisory, but according to what I read on the website about this board, there's at least 2 more meetings that could be held to review this project. And it has to be done within 3 months of the submittal of the application, which has already happened. So like Carol said, we want to know why it can't come back to NBAR. Is it not in the best interest of both the parcel owner and the people of Los Alamos to have this project reviewed in front of this board? And this is where the opinions can be aired, especially since we understand the permit approval is only 1 to 2 months away. So I implore you, do whatever you can if you have any power to bring this project back here so that we can all air our opinion. Thank you.
Approved. It's not coming back to the boards.
My understanding is that the project isn't in the design control overlay. There's no requirement in the land use and development code or in our ordinances that requires the project to receive design review. The applicant voluntarily brought the project for conceptual review before an application for the land use permit was submitted, which anybody can do. Anybody is welcome to apply for design review and come before your board. But there's no requirement for the project to be reviewed by NBAR before it's approved.
Find that amazing. We review cell towers, but we don't review.
Yeah, it's due to the location of the project. It's not in the design control overlay, which is something that the Board of Supervisors approves. The design control overlay is all throughout the county. Sometimes subdivision maps might require design review. We looked at the subdivision map. It's not required for this parcel. CUPs and DVPs require design review.
Where do citizens without concerns go? They can't come to us or some other design review board.
Yeah, well, the citizens, thank you for coming today and sharing your comment. You can certainly work with the planner. And I also encourage you to work with the applicant and to explain your concerns about the project. There are other avenues to express your feelings about the project or your concerns about the project, even if the project is not required to be reviewed by the design review board. I encourage you to keep working with the planner. You said that you have been coordinating with Kathleen.
No, she said all we can do is wait until it's approved and submit it.
So the project it's in the process of being reviewed right now. And I think since this is not on the agenda today, I'm happy to talk with you more after the hearing is over. Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, and if you guys have any other questions about projects that are required to be reviewed by your board, maybe we can provide a little presentation about the different design review requirements. Because I understand it's a little bit complicated and it's not something that's not necessarily black and white.
On this all the time, so that's somewhat surprised that this is not required.
I'm having a hard time hearing everybody right now.
I would too.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Is my volume not up on here? Can you hear me better now?
I just said that I'm having a hard time understanding why you review single family dwellings in general fairly frequently and that this one somehow slips through the cracks.
So there's also another interesting section in our ordinance about NBAR review of single family dwellings that I want to pull up. And if you can just give me a moment to find that, I can bring it up on the screen.
And is there nothing in the community plan that would address this?
So as was discussed during the November hearing, when this project did come before your board for conceptual review, I had mentioned that there are policies in Los Alamos community plan. I don't have the policy in front of me, so I can't remember exactly what it says, but that the project is subject to the policies in the Los Alamos community plan. I think there are a couple of aesthetic policies, if I remember correctly, in that community plan that the project is subject to.
And that's planner review though.
Yes.
That's just.
I mean, I share the same concern about the fact that, like today, we're reviewing cell towers again, which have relatively low impact on any community that they're in, and most of them are on very large parcels of land. And yet, here is a pretty good example, and we have another house on the list today, where they're highly visible, they make a difference in the community. Obviously, you can hear this. We have reviewed garage remodelings in this group before. It had several recalls to further explore the modifications that the applicant was wanting to make. And yet something that is this significant is concerning going forward, as many of our communities, the small independent unincorporated communities, are faced with, as these ladies have said, the communities having virtually no voice. So I'm confused about it as well.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak to the subject that is not on today's agenda? Okay, with regards to this particular item, because they're not required to come in front of them. Yeah, we have no control. We can't ask for a project to come to us. It's in this case, it would be voluntary. Some are required. This just happens to be one of those that are not. Okay, so with that, we're gonna move on to the agenda items. Does anyone need to recuse themselves?
Do we address these ladies' concerns, or to the extent that we can?
Well, I think we're all of the opinion that while the project itself was presented well, we voiced a lot of concerns that it is incompatible with the area.
He was starting with the driveway and the assumption that he was gonna get all that real estate in the front.
Correct.
And all the way to the back where they were reconverting some old barn into a ADU or something.
Well, just in the simple fact that he equated the height of his building with the height of another building that just had a ridge line, whereas it's just a block. So with regards to what we can do, not a whole lot. So.
Very satisfying, but I guess.
Well, yeah,
The way it is.
unfortunately, it'll have to be the 70 residents to voice their opinion to planning staff. All right, so now we'll move on to item number 3, agenda status report. Is there a change in today's agenda?
There are no changes to the agenda.
Moving on to the meeting minutes for February 22nd. You were all given an advance copy of those meeting minutes. I would ask that, is there anything that you would like to change about those, revise, or add to those minutes? Okay, then I would ask now for a motion to approve the meeting minutes for February 22nd. Second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item number 4. Item number 5. And more informational briefings. Has anybody had any contacts with applicants, supervisors, planning staff? Not seeing none, not hearing none. We'll move on to item number 6. Staff update.
I don't have an update for you today.
Thank you very much.
Well,
Now,
actually, if we can, I could share with you now, the section of the code that I was referring to earlier about, it's special provisions on NVAR's review of single-family dwellings, which does not apply to the Jensen property, but, I wanted to share this, which is in the Land Use and Development Code. This is a special provision just for NVAR. I don't think that the other BARs have this, but here's what it says. I'll read it for you. Review by the North County Board of Architectural Review of one-family dwellings is advisory and does not require either preliminary or final approval.
That is different from, C1.
Correct.
What is that?
Board adopted.
Hold on, but is
Oh,
that a
can you-
subsection under another?
Can you turn on the mic when you're, Yeah,
Loud enough.
yeah, just so the Zoom can hear. Thank you.
Is that a subsection under another portion of the code that only applies to a certain section? Or is that the overview of the code?
So that section that I just read, it's section 358270, and it's not a subsection of any specific areas. It covers the entire jurisdiction of the NBAR review. So any single family dwellings reviewed by NBAR, your actions would be advisory. And those dwellings would not require preliminary final approval.
Next question. Is it in any, only in select locations?
Or jurisdiction. So if this had remained in C-bar, they would have had to come to C-bar and.
Well, they still would not have been required to be reviewed by CBAR, period, because they're not in the design control overlay. But I just wanted to share that with you because just so we have an understanding of NBAR's jurisdiction when it comes to single family dwellings. It's an interesting section, and I don't know that all planners have included that.
For preliminary and final?
All the time. Including as close to garage. Remember the one
So-
that old orchid there?
Excuse me, then why are we wasting the county's time and money reviewing these things unless it is the applicant's request? I'm lost. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be in, you know what?
Yeah,
I'm just
that's
completely
okay.
lost.
And I really just want to share this so that we're all understanding what the code says. And so moving forward, that we just understand what is required.
That exemption was written into the bylaws of the NBAR specifically at the request of Joe Centeno, when the single board of review was divided into when it was divided into 4 separate boards, because he felt that it was specifically burdensome for home builders in this area, where somebody would buy a small plot of land and try to build a house out in a rural area. He did not want what was happening to people in Santa Barbara, where they were being very particular about architecture for a house that's out in a rural canyon somewhere, say Tepiscay or something like that, and being held to an extreme standard. That's the history of it, because I've been on the board since the very first day. So
I think, moving forward, I want us to all have this information. And, this is not to discount your review in any way. And I think that your review is very important for these types of buildings. It's just important to understand that for single family dwellings, it's an advisory action.
So for instance, we have project today. Number 3. Is a single family. They're here voluntarily.
Not here voluntarily, so your review is still required if it's in the design control overlay, yeah, or hillside ridgeline. So let me explain. So there is also, so structures that are subject to hillside ridgeline. I don't believe that those are subject to the same advisory action I just described. So hillside ridgeline is under a separate section of our ordinance. So dwellings that are coming before your board, because they're in the design control overlay, are your actions are advisory and do not require preliminary final approval on those projects.
What's the process for that to be modified? So that there was oversight. That mattered.
That would be an LUDC text amendment. That would go to the Board of Supervisors.
So, and supervisor from this district would then present that to the larger board? Or what is the process for that? I mean, clearly, what we're all experiencing today is some concern over what seems to be something that was done in the past that may have served a community in the past, but is not clearly serving these communities going forward. So if this is something that we need to look at as a body, and I'm just asking what would the action be that would be required in order for this to be heard as another level?
That's a pretty big question, but like I mentioned, that would be an amendment to the code. And
Those get amended all the time.
so somebody has to bring forward the amendment.
Would that be somebody from, would that be somebody on the board? Or is it somebody from the general community? Or is it somebody from this group? Who would be the person most likely to make that presentation? And,
I'm thinking it's a big question. Like I said, I think that any of those parties are welcome to propose a text amendment. But that's something that, if an applicant is putting forward that change, that then planning and development needs to review it and write a staff report and recommend approval of that to the board. So there may be other avenues to discuss or pursue before that happens, because that's a lot of work that would need to go into that.
I understand. I also understand that this environment and the northern part of the county somehow feels a little bit like we're different. And that the value of what we're trying to do here as professionals is to add value to these communities. And as they were saying, to protect their interests where they don't have any other protection. It feels a little like discriminatory, and that at the whim of one particular individual who thought that it would be too hard to build a house in Tepiscate, if they had to come to architectural review. But I don't think that this group, in the time that I've been here, has ever wasted any applicant's time. I think if you talked to any applicant who's ever been before this group since I've been here, they would say, as the group that did the orthodontics office up in Orchid, who listened so carefully and ended up with an absolutely lovely project because of the time that this group put into it. And I don't think that they would say that they were held to a standard that was anything above them. I'm just confused like anybody else.
I hear you, and I think that this is something that we can certainly discuss more. I think the last thing I want to say about amending the LUDC is that you're welcome to talk with Supervisor Nelson about it and discuss whether this is something that can be added to an upcoming LUDC text amendment package that our long-range planning division is already working on.
Great, that's helpful. Thank you.
So just for clarity, an applicant comes 3 times.
You mean conceptual, preliminary, final?
3 times. Conceptual.
I want to look more into that and provide you with more information as the staff person. I don't want to say anything that's incorrect, and this is a little bit of a gray area. So I appreciate. Okay, gotcha.
Out there to staff. Certainly see what Joseph Dental is trying to do with regards to development in the northern part of the county, because we have so much of it. But I also understand that when you're dealing with, for lack of a better term, a monochromatic area in aesthetic design, such as Los Alamos, such as some of the other small enclaves of buildings and residences and structures. Would it not be easier to provide design overlay for that entire area if the residents wanted to keep it the way they want to keep it? Rather than rewrite the LUP to include everyone in the northern part of the board, the northern part of the county. So that we wouldn't be seeing infill structures in some of the areas. I mean, we review for residential stuff all the time in Orchid because there's a design overlay, right? In areas that don't have or just a portion of their community is in the design overlay, wouldn't it be easier just to incorporate the design overlay for the entire community? To keep it.
Cell tower.
Well, yeah,
So what you're trying to say really is we should have
I mean, if there's.
old Orchid community specific plan that they can look to, Los Alamos specific community plan that they can look to without incorporating the whole county or the whole section, North County section. So which would make more sense because a lot of places you can't, typically, you can't see the house from the road. It doesn't bother anybody. Let the person do what they want to do and not be burdened with having somebody tell them they don't like a certain way a window looks. Yet in the specific community plan, something in Los Alamos, they would want to try and keep it in this kind of a style so they can at least fit to that style. It makes more sense than, and it's a better use of the public's, funds also, because you don't really need to be looking at houses that you can't see from anywhere or places like that. Because obviously we do look at single family homes, we look at every tract that comes through. So that whole argument gets thrown out for the tract, right? I mean, they had to get, every tract that's come through us had to get, final approval from us. They didn't have the option of coming 3 times, right? So maybe changing the ordinance, the whole ordinance isn't the right way, but, or to change it there for single family homes, but to make it so that we follow the community standards, which would be more appropriate for each individual.
Were you talking about a tract home subdivision? It's a tract. Which brings up the subject, which I think we're going to be experiencing more. I certainly see it happening in Los Alamos once again. So it seems to be the touch-out here. For a project like the Legacy project called Village Square, which has caused a great deal of concern within the community down there, where it was permitted 20, 40 years ago initially. The project was sold a couple of times, most recently during the early part of COVID. And they have never presented architectural plans at all. They had a community meeting. That's a community meeting. And they had absolutely no visual presentation of what these 57 new homes are going to look like that are literally right in town. And the response that was disseminated was, well, they got approval 20 years ago. Yet nobody's ever seen the plans. So I think looking at subdivisions going forward, particularly those that are not providing affordable housing aspects, something that we should be saying, at least to give some reference point for what needs to be a standard within any community that is, as you said, monochromatic, where there are standards. It's an old Western town or it's an old French town. I don't care much which one it is, but if it's going to be something that's going to be maintained and the value of the community architecturally protected, you know, it seems like these things are things we should be looking at. That's really the best use of what our skill levels are. Rather than, and I don't mean to diminish the value of cell towers. They're important too, they're a lot important.
When, several of us had issues with the fact that the plan that was presented was not realistic. That we've all done work in Los Alamos and know that he could not develop the front of the project the way he presented. And honestly, my personal opinion was I didn't believe him that those weren't going to be vacation rentals in the back. But that's a different subject. That project was not realistic as presented. Does that have any bearing on the fact that it's not coming back to us or should come back to us?
When you say realistic, do you mean like in order to meet like public works standards or?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so the project is definitely going to be reviewed by all of the applicable county departments like flood control and roads and all of those departments. So those regulations will certainly apply. And I think at a conceptual stage, it was probably really helpful for that applicant to hear that if they hadn't submitted their land use permit yet, so they wouldn't have been able to hear that information yet.
So to be clear, they submitted a building or an application. Have they submitted land use yet?
They have submitted their land use permit. I don't think they had submitted their building permit application yet. They had simply submitted a design review application to come to your board.
Your comments move with that application.
Yeah.
So the application is not required to be reviewed by NBAR, but staff will certainly consider the fact that they applied and received conceptual review. And they would consider the comments that you guys made, yeah.
Thank you. All right, so let's get back to today's standard agenda. Item number 1, BR number 23-00173, the Verizon Tower on Rucker Road. Is the applicant available? And if so, please introduce yourself for the record and begin your presentation.
Madison, you could go ahead and unmute yourself. That's okay.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, this is Madison Lascausa, and I'm representing Verizon Wireless for this proposal. This is a continuance from the last NBAR meeting in December. Verizon is proposing to install a new 50-foot faux water tower to conceal their antennas. It's all within a new 900 square foot equipment lease area, which has an 8-foot high open chain link fence. And then if we could pull up the plans. Perfect. And then sheet A1 has the overall site plan. So on the left-hand side is the enlarged version, and then the overall site plan on the right-hand side. Access to the site would be coming off of Rucker Road. And then it also depicts the overall topography. You can kind of see the slope from where the site is at and where the rest of the agricultural area is. There we go. Perfect. And so the last comments were to receive a materials and color board. I think some of the members wanted to see the materials, so I sent that over to the planner. Hopefully you guys have that. And then there were some questions regarding the service lights. Those are always to remain off. It's just via an automatic or manual light switch for the technicians to use when they're servicing the site. Otherwise, the site is to remain dark. And then we are not proposing landscaping. This is an active working farm with no existing irrigation right up to where our cell tower is. And in addition to that, it's the property has a well, so we would have to tap into their well and use some of their water in order to irrigate the landscaping. And that is about it. Let me know if you guys have any questions. I'm here to answer anything.
You know, listen, one of the things that we wanted was topography. We had mentioned to at our last meeting that we were looking for some site sections with regards to the existing lower ag land, the flat section where this is going to be, and then the roadway. Yeah, are those in the works?
The topography, we kind of added a layer of the topography on the enlarged site plan. So all
Right,
those wiggly lines is, okay.
I understand that, but we specifically asked for a site section.
Of the overall topography?
Yes. So something that would
Okay,
cut up Parisima down onto the, where you're gonna put your tower and then down, continue on down to the ag land.
Okay, I can see if we can get a cut sheet of just the overall site plan. I was under the impression that you just wanted the layer of the topography added, so we added the topography layer.
Yeah, I'm gonna go back to the request for the site section on this. So you would cut something through one, cut across to where you're gonna put the tower and then continue on down to the ag land. I'd also like to see, on the east side, the property across the street indicated in that same site section. Yeah, Parisima.
Is there anything else? So I have the topography site section, and then you wanted to see also a view from the other side of Parisima?
Well, your site section is gonna cut right across through there, showing the topography, the elevation of the tower, the fencing, the plateau, the roadway height, and then the adjacent property that's lower than the road, right?
All right, hopefully I have all of that.
Basically just a section detail that was drawn perpendicular to Parisima Road right through the site and then down into the park field, I think is what they're trying to get across with some general elevations of the elevation of Parisima, the elevation of this, of the pad, and the elevation of the park field. I don't think it's any more complicated than that.
All right, I'll have them add the elevations to the survey.
Now, with regards to the fencing around the enclosure, looks like we're asking for details on that, and you've given us elevations.
Yeah,
So
so you guys asked for the material, and so the last sheet, the elevation shows it's an 8-foot high chain link fence.
A5 chain link fence with barbed wire on top. And you're proposing no slats, correct?
Correct. So it already has an existing fencing material. If I could provide some site or an existing photos of the site, it already has an existing fencing material around it, and that is blocked off. So our site isn't really, the open chain link fence is going to be behind the covered wall. It's not really a wall, but their fencing material that they have out there now.
Does the board have any other questions at this time?
I do have some concerns. We have some concerns regarding the cell tower itself. And I understand that disguising these things with these oak trees and full water towers and whatever is desirable. Is it necessary that this is 50 feet tall, or is that seems like it's pretty significant height?
Yeah, the height is needed for the RF engineers, just because of how many dips there are within the road. So our target area is to reach Highway 1 and 246. And so due to the bluffs and the overall topography of the surrounding area, the height is needed so that we can reach and provide coverage.
I'm sure you studied this, but it seems like there might be a more ideal location on a higher elevation. Not necessarily at this location. Has that been considered at all? Where you have maybe
Yes.
more wide distribution or because it seems like this would be an ideal location. I mean, I know that I'm somewhat familiar with the area, and there's hills to the, I guess it'd be the east of this. And also further to the south, there's also hills, the La Prisma Hills. So that would seem like maybe that would be a more advantageous location for the cell tower. I realize that's not necessarily in my purview, but that would seem like something that might realistically be looked at in terms of getting the best distribution for your service.
Yeah, we looked at a few other sites, especially along that hilltop. And unfortunately, either a multiple of reasons, either the landlord wasn't interested, or there was a problem with utilities, or it didn't provide enough coverage for our RF engineers. So there's a multitude of reasons why the other sites weren't chosen over this site, and why this site was overall chosen.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other comment from the board? And with that, I'm going to open it up to public comment on this item. Is Karen available? Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself for the record, state your address.
Hey, hello. My name is Karen Hellenstein, and I am here representing 1335 Carissima Road. Landowner Joe Neeson, who has owned the property at 1335 Carissima Road since 1978. She lives in a 2-bedroom, 2-bath ranch home, which is situated. Can I approach this? This is where the home is situated. Right here. That home that she lives in, and myself and my children visit regularly, would be directly in view of this 5G antenna, will be right in front of their house. So in your conceptual review of this and design review, is that being taken into consideration? The view that's being given to this home that she's owned since the 70s that she lives in. Is that able to be considered? Because I welcome you to come to her home and stand on her front porch, and you will no longer see the sky in front of her house. You will see their antenna. Now, we also feel that this whole thing with this Verizon antenna, and no, it hasn't been considered for another area. We know that to be true because the property owner who's complaining today has not been approached. She has property that would be better suited for this use. She hasn't been approached by Verizon. Also, it's being put right here on the corner, right across from Joni's house, not on the southeastern corner, which it would actually have better view of that Highway 1 and 246 corner on the other end. This would actually be better suited on the other corner of the same property, but that's not even being suggested. Why? We believe it's because the group of, okay, so you're talking about this being ag land. Are you taking into consideration that the county changed the zoning immediately across the street to R3? And that there's homes actively going in directly across the street? Is that being considered? And the health benefits or not of having this technology within 200 feet of your home? I mean, is that being considered in the design? Because it's definitely going to change the way Joe Neeson is able to enjoy her property. Right? So we are against this project completely because of the location. It's being suggested in a location that is the worst possible location that anyone could ever suggest that would negatively impact Joan Neeson's home. And is it because the other residents of this area who own homes in the area got together with Joan Neeson and they were able to stop those horrible loud wind fans that were going all night long, changing the seasons so that they could grow strawberries during the winter time that had never been done before. And so the home that had always existed there, we couldn't sleep at night. And so we had to complain enough to get the fans to stop. And so we did, and they stopped the fans. And now all of a sudden we have a 5G antenna tower going up in exactly the worst area on the property next door.
Chair, can I interrupt? We are past our 3-minute mark. Did you want to continue with the public comment?
Thank you for considering our concerns. Seriously, thank you.
Madison, do you have any other thing to add on this one?
Yes, a couple of things. So the other side of the of Charisma and Rucker Road, you mentioned that she was wondering why that wasn't selected. That's outside of Verizon's search ring. So we didn't look east, more west. And then in addition to that, we did look at some of the homes across Charisma Road, because that was more in line. However, it's all residential with a hilltop, which creates shadowing from our antennas. So the agricultural open area was deemed the best fit for this site. And that was it, I think, for her comments.
Madison, did you consider the impact it might have on the adjacent neighbors when you were doing your evaluation?
We submitted an EME report, which shows the effects of it, and it was already approved by an engineer, stamped off, and it's under the FCC guidelines. So we would never put up a cell tower that's over the FCC guidelines. So these are under the FCC guidelines. and that was already submitted to the county.
And that was considering the radio frequency for the radio waves, but I was thinking more along the lines of visual impacts.
Yeah, we have photo sims. I don't know if you guys saw those.
I did.
Okay, so that kind of shows it from Charisma Road. We took a couple of pictures.
Well, I have to say that I'm somewhat sympathetic with the individual that had the complaints, because I wouldn't want that if it is indeed 200 feet from my front door either. So I do sympathize with her concerns. And I would just hope that you guys have completely evaluated all the other opportunities here before you settled on the site, that it wasn't, you were really concerned about maybe, economics or something of that nature, and or strictly on an economic basis rather than maybe the visual impact you might be creating, for these neighbors. I think that's it, Brian.
Anyone else? All right, well, Madison. Do you have a, did you fill out a comment?
Yeah,
Oh, you're Joy? Yeah. Okay, sorry about that. I was looking at the other item.
I'd like to read.
Yeah, hear you.
My name's Joy River. I'm a resident of Mission House. I'm pretty close to the cell phone tower. I'd like to read to you from a PubMed article. Health risks from radio frequency radiation, including 5G, should be assessed by experts with no conflicts of interest. This technology was never really assessed by experts with no conflict of interest. They used industry scientists. And people don't really know what the effect of this ionizing radiation will have on humans or wildlife. Let's see. The lack of proper unbiased risk evaluation of the 5G technology places populations at risk. Furthermore, there seems to be a cartel of individuals monopolizing evaluation committees and thus reinforcing the no-risk paradigm. We believe that this activity should qualify as scientific misconduct. In 2021, when we were locked down, they spread this technology everywhere. It was eerie to watch the FTC hearing when they rolled it out, because they were just going ahead with it. There was no objection allowed. I believe this tower is too close to residents, especially Karen's friend. It's too close to commuters. It's too close to farm workers in the fields. They're going to be exposed to radiation that has never been tested. Picking strawberries is already a very dangerous job. It's very hard on people. They call it the devil's fruit for a reason. So I would prefer if the cell phone tower went somewhere else. And I thank the board for the consideration.
I have one question. What's ionizing radiation? Is that the term you used?
It's radio frequency in the high band, which is what they opened up with 5G. They opened up a higher band. Higher band radio frequency. I can look up the definition for you.
would you like to come up to the podium?
I'd like to have the applicant, if they know what that is, give us back when they come back with a section, explain exactly what ionizing radiation is. Because terms are being bandied about that I'm not sure anybody understands what they are. I definitely don't know what they are. And if they're gonna be bandied about, I'd like somebody to explain them.
I'm definitely not a radio frequency engineer either. However, if need be, I can have a radio frequency engineer join the next NBAR meeting to discuss ionizing radiation.
Or just a simple statement, that would be fine. You don't have to bother them to join the meeting.
Can I read the definition of ionizing radiation, please?
Please.
Ionizing radiation includes nuclear radiation, consists of subatomic particles or electromagnetic waves that have sufficient energy to ionize atoms or molecules by detaching electrons from them. So humans are made of molecules. These electromagnetic waves that this tower will be giving off has sufficient energy to ionize atoms, so to detach the electrons. I know it's kind of scientific and I'm not a scientist, but if it was tested technology and they were rolling it out everywhere, that, I would feel safer with it, but I don't since they have not tested it.
Madison, getting back to some of the comments from the public, one of the reasons we asked for the site section is to provide a little bit of clarity with regards to the elevation of the tower, the faux water tower itself versus the land below versus the height of the road versus the land across the street. So as you develop that site section, that's what we're looking for.
No problem. I will see if our A&E team can prepare that.
Yeah, thank you. Have they submitted a formal application? Is it-
Yes, they have. They have a conditional use permit in process with planning and development. I can look into that. It's either gonna be planning commission or zoning administrator. I can check it.
Do they have any signed design?
Yes, they do. Soren Kringle is the planner. He's unable to make it today. I'm gonna look that up right now and clarify for you.
Any other comments from the board? With regards to your return, Madison, one of the items that we requested that would have been most helpful for this meeting would have been that site section. So with that said, I'm of the opinion that you should come back for further conceptual review with that item attached in your package. There's no landscape provided. No.
That's what they have, water. Like water.
Yeah. No, there was no landscaping involved because of the water rights for the the landowner. He's on a well and they would have to tap into that. So they're proposing no landscaping.
It's also important to note that this whole site is already fenced. They're putting a fence inside of the fenced area. The farmer uses that area as a yard, so the fencing is already screened by the fence. It's the exterior fence. It would basically be a little oasis inside of the desert. Well, landscape it.
Yes and no.
There's no fence there. There's no fence around their yard. They don't have a fence.
So if you can add, existing items, the topography, and then your facilities onto that site section, that'd be great.
Is that the case? There is no fencing around the perimeter of the lodging. Like, you have two different things, and here you have three of them.
They're showing a fence and Madison said it was already a fenced in yard.
There's no fence.
Well, the fence is only appeared on one side, and that's off the roadway. The rest of it's all open.
I just looked at it on Google Earth and I don't see a fence anywhere.
That's
That
across
isn't
the
even
street.
the property. That's the other side of the street.
Yeah.
That's the view. They're not even showing pictures of the actual property.
I can provide pictures of the actual property. That way you guys can see the existing fence that's there.
I didn't.
I see our house.
Sure.
Here's the pole. Yeah. Okay, so,
I think that's easy to resolve with some photographs.
This is what we should call
If there's no fencing there, I would like to see some landscape. And water's not an issue because you simply bring in a tank and you put a battery operated controller on.
Madison, do you have any questions for us?
No, so far I have topography site section and then to provide photos of the existing site as it is right now. That way you guys can see the fencing material that they used.
Right, and then we're gonna want you to locate on that site section, both the proposed and existing fence lines. And then any permanent structures that are gonna remain on that site, after construction. So we don't need to see any of the, any of the storage containers that aren't gonna be there, the building that's not gonna be there. Everything that will be there post-construction.
No problem.
Thank you. Thank you. With that, I think, have Soren agendize her for further conceptual. Thank you very much, Madison. And moving on.
Thank you.
to
Have a good
item-
rest of your day.
Item number 2, BR number 23-00062. Let's see. James, if you're available, go ahead and introduce yourself for the record and begin your presentation.
I'm right here. Should I come up to this
Yes,
one?
please.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Do this one.
We missed one. I'm sorry. James,
Oh, we're,
you're next. Yeah, you're next. I'm sorry about that. We're moving on to item number 2. BR number 24-00029, the Verizon Tower on Telephone Road. Armando, are you available?
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, awesome. All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Armando Montes with Sequoia Deployment Services, representing Verizon Wireless. Verizon is proposing a new wireless telecommunications facility at 2800 Telephone Road in the city of Santa Maria, APN number 129010036. The proposed project is located at the northwest corner of the property, set back 100 feet from existing property lines. The facility itself is designed as a 50-foot faux water tank where all the antennas and radios will be housed. All other associated equipment will be located within the 900 square foot lease area at the base of the tower, shielded behind a 6-foot tall redwood fence. The objective of this project is to improve network coverage and capacity in the residential and rural areas of East Santa Maria Valley. This pretty much concludes my presentation, and I'm open to any questions the board may have.
What was that? Yes.
Yeah, let's go to the site.
So how far off the road are you, Armando?
We're set back 100 feet from the property line, and then from the road itself. Give me a second. I think it should be on the drawings.
What sheet would you like? Oh, there it is.
Is it this one? That's the site plan one.
Armando, what's your elevation related to the roadway? To your pad?
Elevation from the roadway to the pad. I know this site kind of drops off a bit. There is an elevation on this side of the property in relation to the road. Once you get to the edge of the property line, it starts to decrease in height. But in terms of an exact measurement, I don't have one.
Well, I think the question is the proposed site lower or higher than the current single family residence that's 150 feet away? I mean, I see the contours, but I don't see any elevations attached to those contours.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I don't think we have them in our drawings. You know, our elevation drawings pretty much just highlight the project itself, not really relation to other buildings.
The contours are kind of useless without elevations.
There was a photograph illustration that showed what looked like a significant elevation from the road. And 50 feet on top of that.
Yeah. Oh, it's probably this one.
Yeah, that's. And there was another one in a different direction, and then that's significantly.
Once again, my initial thought here is if all other options have been explored to where to locate this thing, that would be less conspicuous and perhaps be in better coverage for the valley. It seemed like some elevation on maybe the hills behind Presskill Winery or something of that nature might be a better location. Having said that, and I guess these things are what they are, not particularly attractive, and I'm not totally convinced that putting them behind a 50-foot high full water tank that has no reality in the real world, that they never existed quite like that, at least to my knowledge. Find them a little bit phony. Anyway, I guess that's my comment.
Armando, isn't there a cell tower across the road from you within 1,000 feet?
Let me see for this site. If it is, it's not, it's definitely not Verizon owned, I'll tell you that much. No, this site, I think the closest site we have for this one is like about 2 miles away, almost on the other side of the 101 freeway.
Have you looked at anything else besides that water tower? I mean, just The tower itself,
Are you talking about the location or the design?
the design.
Yeah, so the design, for us, faux water tank is pretty much one of the most like stealth designs that we have. Um, because it hides all the equipment and antennas and the radios and whatnot. You know, kind of just given the location, that was, we felt like our best option, and it's kind of like the best option we have to give the community. So this is us putting our best design forward. In terms of other stealth designs, you know, there's, you know, monopines, you know, the fake tree looks. Those still kind of leave the antennas exposed, given the landscape of the current area. I don't think like a monopalm would be very like real accurate. So we kind of felt like, you know, the faux water tank, more rustic look, kind of blend better with the surrounding agriculture area. It's kind of what we settled on.
Well, one of the photos we're looking at right now,
Mm-hmm.
see a high tension line, see another power line there. Granted, this is only looking at it from one view, but it would seem to me that just put the tower up. No faux anything.
Sometimes it's easier to hide things when put in plain sight. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, I understand. I think there was also a request from the property owner that they wanted some kind of shielding. So this is kind of like the best option we gave them.
Is there the possibility of putting some trees around it so it's not standing out there by itself to help soften the legs of the tower themselves?
I'd be kind of honest with you guys. I think it'd be kind of tough. More so because the area that we're putting it in, it's a active agriculture field. I think alfalfa's out there. So even the comment regarding landscaping we received from our planner, you know, we're trying to work with the property owner on getting some additional landscaping out there, but you know, like I mentioned, it's an active field. So really our site itself is impactful enough, let alone, you know, asking to put more trees and you know, having to keep all this properly landscaped and with the water and whatnot, it's a little bit difficult.
How much impact, I mean, how much influence does the landowner have on what you decide to put out there? Everything?
How much input does the landlord have?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of work hand in hand with the landlord. I mean, ultimately it's property. We kind of work into an agreement with them. What works for us, what works for them. So it's definitely like I would say more like a partnership.
Any requests by on this applicant by the board? Any other information that you'd like to see as agendas or conceptual today?
My concerns about this and similar projects is not necessarily about. It's less about the visual impact. And I realize it's not one for you, personal expression and all concern. I'm the most concerned about the extraordinary and accelerated preponderance of these structures all over the valley, all over the area. That this is the first I've heard about the environmental impact, potential impact of the 5G towers. That does not seem to be something that's being considered, at least we're not hearing about it. And what I also know is that these towers they're there forever. The only way it can be taken away is if the Verizon should want to take it away. It goes with the land. Other properties like this, if there's one particular one over it, and I mean that's right in the middle of town, in the roads. And when the property was recently sold, part of the caveat was that it could never be removed. So if something is 5G, 6G, 10G, each one is exponentially more powerful and has the potential for who knows what, that's my concern. Maybe significant amount of understanding that perhaps my concern on this, again, it's not in my purview, but as a citizen, I'm concerned about the impact on the area.
Okay, so, I think as you come back for further review, as we have asked the last applicant, provide a site section from west the telephone, east through the tower location. I mean, you already have the topo, so you should be able to provide that section fairly easily.
Gotcha, guys. So, sorry, a little bit hard on hearing. So we're looking for a site section with the elevation.
Yeah, roadway elevations through the tower site. And then south through a little bit south through the adjacent property. And how far are you guys exactly from the single family home?
Let's see. Give me 1 second. I do not have that. I thought I had that measurement. I don't, but I'll make sure to get that added.
Would also like to add that give some consideration to options rather than this water tank. I think, Robert, you mentioned it. I kind of agree that sometimes just a cell tower sitting there would be less intrusive, visually impactful than this, 10 or 12 foot diameter, 12 foot high water tower sitting 50 feet in the air. Is really got something to also consider.
I have a question. At this point in the process, have people on Cambridge been noticed?
The project isn't complete, so they haven't been noticed for the application. Teresa, have they been noticed for the Enbar hearing? Have neighbors been noticed for the Enbar hearing?
Yes, actually 1,000 feet.
Okay.
Yes.
So they haven't been noticed for the CUP application, but they've been noticed for the design review.
Yes.
Yeah, and I wanted to also clarify, and I forgot to get back to you on the last project, but both of these cell towers you've seen today so far are being reviewed by the Planning Commission. Both of these projects are being reviewed by the Planning Commission. And I just want to remind, I know, I appreciate what you guys are saying about the potential health impacts and but I just want to remind everybody that this is a design review board and we're looking at aesthetics. So that's just my job to say that.
My question, that would be, who else would like to do that?
Our planner looks at it. So we have specific guidelines that we need to follow. We review the the radio frequency RF engineered documents that are provided with the project.
So each new level of solar power.
Yes, so we do look at the cumulative effects of these cell developments and telecommunications technologies. And we ask the applicants to show us the emissions from the proposal on top of, so cumulatively with any other surrounding facilities.
Something stood out from a comment one of the public members spoke about earlier was the reference to who of the scientific community do they engage to give information, whether it's someone provided by basically the applicant or somebody that is hired as a professional to give an unbiased opinion on the impact. That would seem to matter in a search question.
I will just say that we follow the federal guidelines for requirements and for emissions for these types of facilities. And we rely on the experts. So we rely on the reports prepared by experts to make those determinations that they're within the guidelines.
I mean, I understand relying on experts, but who's paying experts? Kind of let it get down. You know, I mean, these property owners are also being paid. They have these cell towers in their property. It's difficult enough to money.
I understand, and I certainly encourage anybody who's here giving public comment to coordinate with the planners, and we'll be happy to talk with you more. This is not really the avenue to do it, to talk about that specific aspect, because this is a design review hearing.
Can we actually get the planner to come to our location so they can see what we're talking about?
I think the planner would definitely coordinate with you on that and coming out for a site visit.
Then we will email them.
Okay,
Thank you.
yeah, thank you. That's right. Yeah, you mentioned that this is going to be reviewed by the planning commission, and the planning commission will look at that as well.
You guys understand that's also a public hearing?
Yes.
Yeah.
When is that next public hearing? I'll look it up. Thank you.
All right, as I have no speakers up for this particular item, is there anyone online that would like to speak to this item?
We do not have anybody online.
With that said, you've got some instructions as far as additional information to provide. Negotiations, I think, would be helpful with the landowner with regards to the fence and the tower design itself. You are agendized today for conceptual review. I would suggest you come back with that information for further conceptual. Armando?
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. Just sorry, one last thing. The items, are we going to get a hard copy of it after the meeting?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I missed that. What was he asking?
Sorry. Yeah,
Oh,
just of the items that are being requested. Just, you know, if I missed something for any reason.
Yeah, the planner will provide you with comments, and then the minutes will also be posted.
So,
Okay.
On the one last point here is, can you provide a similar diagram as the one that's showing on the screen currently with just the tower with no bow elements around it?
Sorry, what was that? Can I provide just a photo of just the tower?
A diagram similar to the one you're showing on the screen with with just the cell tower, no faux tree, no faux tank, no faux spaceship, anything. So just a naked tower.
Yeah, let me see what I can get.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you everyone for your time. I'll talk to you guys soon.
All right, getting to item number 3.
James.
More number 23 VAR 00062, James. Want to approach the podium, introduce yourself for the record, and begin your presentation.
Good morning. James Gerber, the architect for the site property in Humboldt. Lisa, can that speaker somehow be made louder? I think it's really soft.
I had, if you could, yeah.
Hello? Is that better? I'm sorry I wasn't able to be here, for the last meeting, but I went through all of the comments you guys had, and I went through to try and correct these things to make sure that we have cohesion between revised floor plans, elevations, some sections. I also saw some other comments about, vegetation. So I wanted to try and address those as well. Is there, do you guys want to start from just the floor plan and get into that? Yeah. You've seen this a few times, correct? Yeah. Okay. I think based on, some of the comments, there was a lot of confusion as to one, the height of the building structure. So we reduced that to, and we spoke with the planning department to about 16 feet. We had moved everything inside, which the green is, which is the building envelope. Actually, the whole house right there is just a cell tower disguised as a house. So everything is what's inside now, the building envelope, including the garage. It's tight, but it's there. There were a couple other comments I wanted to address that also have to do with erosion control and building. Can I approach for erosion control, compared to the hillside and the elevations we have up here, these are already existing. These are like concrete culverts that are already, I think, years put in. I was concerned more about all of the sludge and everything that might still that might come up on this side. So we had proposed a retaining wall here. However, that retaining wall is outside the building envelope. And that's a big fall one. Judging by the cut and fill quantity that we have, we know that we have plenty of overburden that we can use to kind of fill that in. If we had to, maybe it's a separate discussion. We can kind of terrace that so it's not so dramatic. Maybe these three little tiny tiers. Check with the fire department, they're in here, they're okay with our basement, we have a fire hydrant down there. We're also putting water tanks up here as well. The landscaping plan, which two sections of the building itself. From my understanding, planning is okay with us. Not exceeding 16 feet, but to do a step kind of a project to where you drive the driveway, the garage, and living room, kitchen is at one level, and then there's like a 6-foot difference, and following kind of like the terrain. The grade break would be here, the nice 18-foot height. That was very confusing, and I apologize for that, because the original feasibility report from years and years ago said for some reason that 35 feet was okay here. Then we heard a 27-foot number. And then we finally saw the report and the hearing that was the parcel map modification. So we
we changed everything. I think from what Francisco Vargas and the county was saying, they were okay with this kind of a layout, doing it this way. Floor plan, if we go to, A100, actually, not here. So, in terms of revegetation, I think in our first MBAR hearing, someone had commented on, windscreen. So the idea was to put these trees here as the windscreen. Ping pong. Here's a paradise. Try to keep it kind of indicative of the neighborhood, because all the existing ones around here all have on through. These are the only existing vegetation we have with those trees right now. There is nothing, it's just vacant, there is nothing here. Except for old growth, which can maintain. But I thought this might be a good way to provide some type of in the southwest. But if we're not conditioned to lump over to the area, we're also okay with just taking all the palm trees out. The next, you scroll, yeah, so this is kind of like the landscaping and irrigation plan. Showing what we want to do with the trees here. The king palms, so they're about 15 to 20 feet high. There's a property right here. Palm trees and trees that can function maybe that property. There's one here, palm trees. I looked at the lighting ordinance, so I kind of just wanted the stuff that was solar, little ambiance, and none of these are uplights. This is a spotlight, puts out about 3 to 4 watts of solar power. Just to illuminate some of the bushes, not to cause the type of disturbance. These are the wall mounted fixtures that we have here, both back here. Also, and that's in parking there. This is all going to be synthetic grass. Just maintained. Precast concrete pavers. And we can got some hybrid decking. We have a sample of just. So this is kind of like the board here. So that the hybrid decking is this. Yeah.
If you want what you said to be recorded, or to be available for later, otherwise we don't.
Oh, I know, it's thanks for coming down.
But these samples will also be provided in the sheet as well. The comments are welcome on adding if you feel like any of the lighting is an issue. So that's the type of taking. Sure. Pass it around. Yeah. First comes mostly the exterior trim and casing will have these two down colors. The majority of the house is going to be stucco. You can't see it, it's on the, but if you scroll, so there's the stucco finish color. The roof is an architectural wood metal. 2022. 3/4 width. There's front entrance. Maybe that's 6 inches would be the front facade has a weatherwood tile finish on it. And this is a driveway. And again, if any of these are truly ugly, and anyone has any problem with any of these colors, let me know.
I felt that they would kind of blend into the topography and just the site pretty well. There's a big ostentatious house here, there's a pink house up here, so this is just muted. I think the house itself is big enough and creative enough in terms of its typology. It's an interesting house that's, you know, I think you guys are aware it's made of shipping containers. And there are also some traditional elements, but it's basically just 5 basic typologies that are gonna make up this structure. Which I've been doing, a lot of. I do a lot of shipping container structures. So, this is gonna be, I think, an interesting project, hopefully significant. The floor plan, I think we've made some changes to. Is it possible to go to the sheet A100? Yes, there we go. I think there was, comments before about why are there windows in the retaining walls? In the wall, there's not, but there's 2 levels. So where the grade break is where above there's window section and below. I provided some of the staging furniture plan. That could change. But it's a very open layout as per the client and kind of how the client likes to entertain and they do. There's 3 bedrooms. There is a lift. As the client is handicapped and does use a wheelchair from time to time. The entrance is angled up there. Is there any way to trick it to where you can see all of it or no?
Yeah.
There's another, plan view showing the whole structure with the garage included. The garage and here's some isometric views. I thought these might be helpful because, there's a lot of angles, there's a lot of stuff going on, right? That at times myself get very confused. So this is what the clients, I think this doesn't come up. This is where we've got going on now. I know you can't hear this. Here's the main entrance, here's the garage. So that is where that great break is, following that line again, this is 6 feet. Here's the lift, personal lift that's on that side. And the pathway is illustrated now. We're having to come out this landing here. You can go up here, and you can go up this repair. You might also take a lift. There's another staircase above here for the kind of living room, future solar. The one thing that I couldn't keep within that 16 feet was the lift. So the lift is because of the requirements for emergency personnel in order for the lift to be on the outside of the building. As you can see in the elevations, it's about 3 feet above that roof line, which we're trying to maintain. If that's a major issue and you guys don't see any reason for it, then we have to adjust that to possibly make it only a 2-stop as opposed to a 3-stop system for the client. Can we scroll down one more? I think there's another, gives you some ideas. Does this,
I'm not sure if it's the same people who were here, last time, but does this help clarify kind of like the access points and how, you know, egress works, for the structure itself, particularly this angled wall section over here? Um, See better? Okay. Um, let's scroll down, let's go to, where else? Okay, so there's the garage view with the house. And keep going, please. What's the roof layout? Yes. Okay, let's do 100. So there's the section of the entrance that is the only area that has that weathered wood finish. Everything else is clearly noted. It's just a stucco. A while back, there was a member commented on there wasn't enough light coming into the kitchen, so I think all of that's been addressed. There is probably more than enough light coming into the house and not just the kitchen. With these architectural elements, we've added this dormer here, which is a pretty big operable motorized window. My goal is to use, and I do this a lot, is to use passive air. So there's ways that I can cool this house without running huge energy bills. By smart vents and movers and the right placement of exhaust ports for that stuff. So that's going to function as that. So let's scroll down. I think that just shows a section of there. Yeah. So let's show you where that retaining wall comes through. Here, where you're going up to that deck. Yeah, it's 6 feet between the two floors. And so on. And the lift as well. There's gonna be a little water feature here, circulating water feature at the end. I'm not sure if that was in the last one, but can we scroll up? All right, I'm sorry, scroll down, yeah. So here's this to me is the more complex or complicated view, but it shows that there's a tremendous amount of light coming into the house. The kitchen. Kitchen is in this area right here. This section I had come this. But here's our allowed 16-foot height restriction. And so we have 2 feet. And the only way I can really think about tying this elevator, they want 90 inches for a journey, right? Because it was part of the, it's possible in my answer, if I want to, but with glass with it. Lots of decks, lots of line technology running around outside the plant. They spend a lot of time outside. Go down to gives you an idea. Couple dome skylights been added. I think now all of the elevation should be cohesive with the floor plan. I had a late start this year, but I was able to get caught up and really spend some time on this. Let's keep going, yeah, let's see. Okay. That's the last elevation here, and that one shows the water feature that we have.
This one?
Yeah. We have a little trough that we're gonna build and, then holding tanks, we're gonna try and, we have to contain as much, water as we can for reuse. We're doing gravity fed, irrigation on the xeriscape, most of the vegetation underground. We have water tanks for firefighting as well as just for, other irrigation purposes. And they're big ones because the fire department requires them to be a certain, flow rate for a certain amount of minutes. So. And let's stay on there, section that here. Is that the end?
That's the end.
Oh. Okay. I think it's a lot more complete now, right? I think I addressed. I went through your list. I went through all three lists, going all the way back to the first our meeting. So I think I was able to address all that stuff. I wasn't really sure what revegetation, that word revegetation means, but I interpreted it to be some type of a landscaping or an existing landscaping plan. So that's there as well.
That was probably me that made the comment. And
Oh.
it's to make sure any of your graded areas that are exposed and raw get some sort of erosion.
Yeah. You do have erosion control measures and erosion control plan. And so that ties into, kind of how we have to address the slope, right? Because it's not just our property and the runoff that we have on property up the street, so we're not the one property above. But we also have the responsibility of trying to contain that because it's all just dirt, right? We have, the built-in concrete culverts for, the water and for the rain, but mud and stuff like that. That's why originally we had proposed that retaining wall where the garage was, because we saw that might be an issue. I'm not sure if it's a conversation for today, but ideally the edge of slope, by putting in a smaller retaining wall past that edge of slope to about 163, we can backfill that. And we can kind of level off that and we can kind of contain any of the runoff from the actual building envelope itself. The driveway slope needs to be slightly modified. There's some grading there and we have some grading. We have a grading plan as well. I didn't see the grading plan in the, it might have been uploaded too late, but there's a. It was certainly.
Okay.
I think. We've had the fire marshal and spoke with the fire department, running the hammerhead and the water tanks and that. But what we need to address is there's a turn, a really sharp turn. Right here, this turn right here, that transition there, we need to have graded that. However, it's outside of the envelope. So I'm not interested in how to do those things. Yeah, not much, but this does exceed 6 degrees right here. Can we scroll down? Cut and fill quantities have been provided.
Then we have to shrink it a little bit, so the bottom here isn't, okay. So this just shows all kinds of quantity areas of disturbance and grading. Because I know that was also a comment and you guys had asked for that as well.
And then James, I know Francisco Corners online and wants to speak.
Oh, sure.
So go ahead, Francisco.
Thank you. Board members, this is Francisco from County Planning. I'm the one reviewing the project. I just wanted to note a few things, specifically regarding the building envelope. That's one of our concerns and comments that we addressed, and we have provided the applicant. So if you go back, here's, or if you could go to sheet page 3 of the plan set, I'll show the footprint of the approved building envelope for the recorded map there. So that approved building envelope is highlighted in green, and the applicant is proposing retaining walls on the outside of that. So that's not something we would support currently. They would either have to come in for a map modification, and which is subject to planning commission review to be able to propose any sort of development outside. So I just wanted to clarify that, and that has been something that's been relayed to the applicant. So we would need to see a revised design that does not include any sort of retaining walls or structures outside of that. The second comment, I guess I have 3 other comments. The second one being, there is some sort of uplighting that's being proposed. I wanted to make sure you guys saw that in the landscaping plan. That's on page 7 of this same plan set. I noticed there are some palm trees that are proposed, and one of the conditions of the map specifically says, landscaping needs to be native. So we were gonna, rely on your recommendation here moving forward. And I guess those are the two of the remaining comments I had.
Francisco, what uplights are you referring to?
If you go to that one right there at the bottom, second to the bottom on the legend there.
Well, not uplights. The 3 inches on the ground and then just going to be on the birds of paradise. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to point out that that there was some sort of what looked to me like uplighting, and I wasn't sure exactly where it was going.
Hey, Francisco, I got a question for you.
Go ahead.
Can you point out the section of the code that shows that you can't have any hardscaping outside any building envelopes, or is that very specific to this particular tract?
That's correct. It's very specific to this tract. I uploaded the conditions to the box folder if you guys want to pull those up.
How do you deal with the concrete drainage structures outside the building envelope then?
So that's different. There is some allowance for drainage features, but as far as like retaining walls, we see that as being avoidable with the design, unless the applicant would. So I'm talking specifically regarding the retaining walls that you saw on that page 2 or page 3, sorry.
Which is kind of tied into the very equal.
Francisco, and he's not allowed any deviation from that building envelope?
There is some sort of deviation. If we go, let me read it off the conditions. It says, the project description says, no additional grading is proposed. Sorry, let me skip through that. Some grading may be required beyond the building footprint. Let's see here. Yeah, it says it may be required to flatten the pad and driveway or clean up slopes that have eroded. We don't see that being the case here because it's a design driven kind of improvement, unless they could justify through maybe a geotechnical report or some sort that that sort of retaining wall would be required regardless if they shift or redesign the development. We could reconsider.
Well, my concern is that these building envelopes are drawn in a vacuum. And yeah, my experience has been that they're, like Steve says, they're arbitrary. And, you know, our job is to look at it in the interest of good design and making it compatible. So I have a concern with that it's such a minor intrusion outside of the building envelope that they should be allowed that.
I would tend to agree with this thing, because of the slope on it. I would consider those retaining walls another portion of the drainage structure. Maintain continuity of the pad for long term. I don't see any difference between those and drainage soils. They're all functioning in the same manner to maintain the slope and maintain the integrity of the building site. And with landscaping, whether it's plants that are proposed or whether they're plants that are native, they will hide the majority of the retaining walls from anybody's view. And if that maintains the stability of the building site, that's way more important for structural runoff, water runoff, than some verbiage in a recorded document. I think that there's got to be some room for allowances for these kinds of things.
Yeah, so based on the strict reading of the conditions for this map, condition number 12 specifically says, all development shall be limited to the proposed building envelope. And based on the definition of development, we would consider an 8-foot retaining wall development. So we would, I would have to check with management to see if there's any sort of exception to that. But based on a strict reading of our LUDC and the condition on the map, that's how we would interpret it.
Is it that it's 8 feet from bottom of the footing to the top? I mean, you're not going to see 8 foot. If it was terraced or if it was half that size, would there be a problem?
So the definition of development includes structures. So even if it was a 3-foot retaining wall or 4-foot retaining wall, I think we would consider it, development.
The structure that's outside the building envelope is almost imperative to this site. It's almost necessary for erosion control and for proper protection down below.
Francisco, I understand you're stuck with the way the code's written or the ordinance is written. If the board chooses, our support of him being able to go outside of the building envelope, does that assist him in getting through the process? If we make that statement in our finding?
I can answer that. So if you want, go ahead and then I can help.
No, you go ahead.
Okay. So my answer is yes, I think so. When we have conditions like this on a project, the planner and staff and management all interpret what the condition means so that we can implement the intent of the condition. I think in a situation like this, it's certainly something like Francisco mentioned, we can bring to our management team and just talk internally and see if that would meet the intent of the condition.
That'd be great. I think my question is, when you draw this building envelope on here, is there a legal description that completely defines it, or is it just an arbitrary line that somebody took on a piece of paper? Because it's a pretty complex legal description if that's what it is. And how do we know where it really is without that?
It was provided to us by the county. So when they did that map adjustment, that was
It was surveyed in and.
Yeah. I get why. And so we're trying to work with those parameters, which are a little difficult, being that we're still just outside of the envelope here.
Seems pretty arbitrary.
And the fire department come up here, we moved it out, they can make that turn. They would rather us, fix that grade.
So we can include your comments, your formal comments in the minutes so that they can be part of the record and that can that will inform the interpretations of this condition.
Is this a specific homeowners association here?
No. There's no HOA or
So
homeowners.
who put the building envelope in place?
The county. There was a hearing. It was back in like 84, 2004. It's probably gone to something. I get previous owner did something he wasn't supposed to do. So originally the development was supposed to be somewhere down here. I think without notifying the county, but he did this himself. He leveled all this work out himself. And they were pissed because of that. They put a height restriction on the guarantee, like you can't build outside this building envelope. Our client is being punished for what this guy did, but it doesn't matter, it is what it is. We can make it work, but, there's some, tricky things outside that building envelope, but any wall, which I think is important for runoff and.
Well, I think that the point that Slime was making was that who determined what the building envelope was going to be?
So when lots are subdivided, then that's an opportunity to place conditions on the map. And so sometimes those conditions might require design review. So like that was an example we were talking about earlier today of when a project might come before your board, or they might have a development envelope to limit the biological resource impacts or limit the aesthetic impacts. And oftentimes those conditions, or they might even be mitigations that were determined as part of the CEQA process. So I don't know the details on this specific subdivision, but my guess is there was probably an environmental document that was circulated. Maybe neighbors commented on it, and then that's how this.
Has a report. He sent
Okay.
it to me.
Yeah, absolutely. So Francisco would know the most about that, but just to give you a general idea, that's why these types of envelopes exist.
I can give a little bit of background. I couldn't hear James, sorry, when you stepped away. So I might be repeating some of what he said, but the background on this is the original map recorded a building envelope here at the lower portion of the site, adjacent to La Valley Road, kind of right next to the cul-de-sac there. Where the parking area is shown there. So that's where the original building envelope was approved back in the 80s. And then subsequently, the previous owners, they did some grading up above and created this pad that we see here on this site. And so that was a violation. And in order to rectify that, they had to come in and apply for a map modification. And through that map modification discretionary process, they recorded this building envelope that exists today, which ultimately recorded a 13,000 square foot building envelope. So that's what we're going off of, and it is a surveyed building envelope. It is recorded with the conditions.
Francisco, why did they put the 16? Why do you think they put the 16-foot height restriction on them?
That was to mitigate the aesthetic impacts.
The county might be more strict about variation here. I mean, since this was done, a lot of particularly higher end subdivisions who have their own architectural groups and they establish building envelopes, they will make modifications based on presentation of actual models sometimes. They require them, particularly in golf course communities. They want models, they want sightlines, they want view and height poles and all of those things. But this is kind of an interesting mess when you think that this was something that was done by a previous owner and this owner is being stuck with it, but they chose it. And but because of the history, maybe the county won't be so open to making an assessment.
We redesigned this whole thing like 5 times. Bring it lower, and bring it lower, and bring it lower, and bring it into what we have now. And working with Francisco, and he's been great, and those guys, and allowing us to do this.
Has the county indicated that they're willing to make adjustments?
I don't think so, right?
Building envelope, because that seems to be kind of key here. To know that they're open to looking at that.
We can definitely include your comments in the minutes.
Yeah, I'm trying to go with the path now of least resistance to get this thing forward. I know the other way would involve more hearings and more delays, and it takes time. And my client really wants to start building this house. So he's okay with, like, if you say no palm trees and no birds of paradise, and he can't have a retaining wall, he's okay with all that. He really is. And although he is out of town, he's given me full authorization to barter and to plead and said, we'll take whatever we have to. If a 3-watt solar light on a bush bothers you guys, it's gone.
Well, we have another discussion.
But here's where we are. I think I like it. I think it is, it's gonna be not completely off grid, but it's pretty close, you know? We're gonna run a lot of solar. We're gonna run,
Yeah. Well, yeah, yes. I think the missing piece here for me is actually seeing a rendering which would visualize the house in place. Seeing what it would actually look like instead of an overhead plan or an elevation that is strictly technical. Seeing how this road plays, how the topography lays, how all of this landscaping plays, how that enormous amount of artificial grass will actually be seen. And then just, you know, for instance, like the tower, what's that gonna look like from the road? What's that gonna look like from the other people's houses? We don't really see what the house looks like here.
Maybe the elevator, Chuck?
Yeah.
You won't see it,
The tower.
if we put the tree line in there, then you won't see it. You won't see the house from the road, from the public road at all.
I have a question for you about the plan, the potential planning about those materials, so palms and birds of paradise. How water friendly are they, drought friendly?
If I remember the pictures, the surrounding pictures before, the other houses had palm trees, right?
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of palm trees. And I think every.
That being said, I would caution you in using king palms
Mhm.
because of the wind. They'll look very dried. Is it the standard form of bird of paradise or is it giant bird of paradise?
It's the standard form. Originally, it was gonna be a Christmas palm. But I don't think the Christmas palms, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think with the frost level that you have in Lumpo sometimes, it gets into the 20. The Christmas palms aren't gonna thrive.
Given the existing neighborhood and, you know, I want you to have the house that you want. I'm okay with the palm trees, just be careful, maybe consider a different one, okay? They're not gonna provide much screening, but they're very open. Bird of paradise is 3 feet tall, these are 15 feet.
Yeah.
Okay. It wouldn't be my first choice for that site. Because you're gonna have to really irrigate them. Bird of paradise can be somewhat drought tolerant. I would urge you to think about using something that's more native.
Okay.
Okay.
Absolutely. Our design here is for this 10,000 gallon tank here, which is remote, going to. Get all these.
No, it's just something you're gonna have to do. With artificial turf like that and the limited amount of landscaping, you're gonna be well under the limitations of the water efficiency ordinance. I just would urge you to consider something a little more drought tolerant and a little more appropriate to the environment.
Okay, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm open to.
You might get more screening just out of the scrub oak that grows around here. I don't know what's on that site, but they super drought tolerant. I mean, they take whatever you can throw at them.
Or do you know contract growers around here where you can get a 36 or 48-inch box and it's at a certain height already?
There are.
There are many of them.
Because to wait for them to grow, to achieve, a 7 or to where they actually provide a windscreen and some type of
What, kind of a common misconception about oaks. The local oaks taken care of can grow 4 to 6 feet a year. They're not slow growing. They just slow growing when they're not given any water. So you can get big ones. There's plenty of growers. Who specialize in that.
The root bed, like, you know, you got your tree line, so is it gonna be a 20-foot root bed by 10 feet deep on an oak like that?
I would refer to.
I don't understand what you're asking.
The oak trees, I'm just curious how much of that, of the earth they're gonna, you know, take up there. I'm not concerned that your report says we're good, but I just, you know, if it's a 20-foot diameter root bed by 10 or 15, 'cause you know, oaks, they can tend to really go out, right?
They're generally gonna be reflective of the canopy you see overhead. It'll be underground.
Yeah, so the tree line, so if it's a 20-foot.
Yeah, but they'll be deeper, so.
They stabilize hills. They stabilize hills. They actually grow on the hills and they stabilize.
So there's other, you don't necessarily have to use oaks. There's lots of other plants that you can use. So
Okay.
just engage somebody that's familiar with the environment and they'll help
Go
you.
take a look at that. I didn't realize they grew that fast. Yeah, it was.
Planted well and irrigated, they will grow very fast.
Okay.
Okay. They'll give you a much more wind protection. And once they're established, you can shut the water off and let them do their thing.
Okay.
Two other ones that are, relatively common in the area too, Toya and coffeeberry. Very, very attractive plants.
Toyas are, yeah.
So, I mean, there's a lot of options out there. Obviously, the way the owner would like the house to look is more important than, but if you get pushback, those are natives.
I like all your ideas. I was going the other way. I was trying to keep indicative to where all the homes around here just have palm trees. I thought if I went outside, but apparently I was wrong, because I put palm trees in here, and then I'm like, so.
Well, we heard Francisco mention natives, so that's why we're throwing that
Yeah,
out there as an option.
palm trees are technically not native to California either. We brought them here, right? So, but yet they're everywhere. Okay, I will take that into consideration.
And I do have some questions for you.
Sure.
Okay, on the site plan, maybe the C1 sheet. It looks a lot to me, and maybe I'm not reading it right, that the driveway crosses over the property line.
Let me see. Driveway crosses over the property line.
Yeah.
Right, where's it for?
This line, kind of?
Yeah, is that not the property line?
No, that's just a fence. There's one, you scroll up.
Very confusing drawing. Or if you end the contour of the property.
No, some of the property over there.
It's got a bearing on it. I thought was one thing that needs to be, at least in my mind, resolved. Secondly, as long as we're on the sheet, it looks like your section CC on this plan does not, it shows the upper side retaining wall. You just stay on that one sheet.
I'll say in that one, okay.
And yet on the site sections, it doesn't show a retaining wall on the uphill side. So I wasn't quite sure whether there was one of the sections shows retaining wall, the other one doesn't. Which is kind of maybe, and as well as the lower side. Section CC, please.
If you go up to CC.
Down.
Yeah. Here.
Right on the third one down on the left-hand side. There's no retaining wall shown there. Okay. And there is a retaining wall shown on the south side, which I guess is the retaining wall that is in dispute, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah, on both those two sections, one as well as section DD. Just kind of take a look at that. Garage door, you're showing two, it looks like they're maybe two 10-foot doors on that garage. I think the garage is 24 feet wide. I think,
Yeah, there's two garage doors.
yeah, maybe you want to take a look at using one, maybe oversized garage door, like something in the neighborhood, maybe a 20-foot garage door.
Yeah, they didn't want to because they have so many Teslas and so many cars.
Well, yeah, so it's gonna be difficult with a single post in the middle, so that's something to really, especially when you're double stacking this thing with a 40-foot deep garage. As well as backing it back out, so I, just give that some thought, I'm not telling you have to do it,
We can,
up to me, but. You
I
might
mean,
want to
big
just consider
door,
that.
we could do something. Before it was different because of the orientation of the house and the hillside ordinance and the residential parking said you needed 22 feet from the 12-foot door to the hillside. And then we were like, well, now that this the orientation has changed, we have plenty of room.
We have the post right in the middle, so to separate the two doors.
Yeah.
So I'm just suggesting that maybe you want to consider one larger door. So they're not just limited to 16 feet, you can get 18, you can get 20, you can get 24. You can get pretty much any size
Yeah.
that you want. So that might keep it away from the front entrance a little bit more and also facilitate easier ingress and egress.
All right. Yeah.
And then, the other question on the, is a little, I had a little challenge in trying just to discern where the levels were, because normally I would have drawn one level and a separate plan for the lower level, but so when you get to that lift, how does that, can we go to sheet A1 or A100 down the other way? I was just confused how that lift worked and what, there you go. Just, so I see the lift there and I see the two sets of stairs from say that lower den room.
Yeah.
And I'm imagining that they both come and go from two fixed levels. So is the stairway coming down? I guess it's coming down from the 6-foot grade change to the lower level that's inside that room.
Yeah. So if you want to walk up from this section.
Okay.
Go through here. The retaining wall penetrates, you go through, you walk up. This is kind of, it's got two doors. So if you're in a wheelchair, you can go through this way, or you can go out that way.
But is not the stair there?
What's that?
You can't go out to the upside because the stairway's in the way, correct?
No, this is just the stairs. You come up the stairs here, your exit's over here. Over here, this is.
All right, this is a very confusing way of drawing this, in my opinion.
Yeah. Believe me, I know.
Well, I'll trust you that you've resolved this.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
It's not well communicated, in my opinion.
In this one, no, but in the, elevations and the sections, it kind of shows you how. But, yeah, that's just where the stairs start, down below, and you walk up, and you still are covered. You know, you're still covered as you go out, you exit over there.
All right, we'll just take my thoughts for what they're worth, but
Okay.
also, and then the kitchen, it looks like you have corner windows. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, and then one terminates back into that wall that continues beyond. The one on the lower side, yes. The corner window and then the wall continues, or is that below it, or?
That's part of this section. This,
Okay. To me, that's a confusing way of delineating that, but that's your purview, so I'll accept that. And then I didn't see anything that indicated how those decks were going to be sloped for drainage.
These decks, these interlocking decks are water.
On top of
Drains moves into them.
any decks as well.
Yeah, yeah. They're interlocking channels and all that stuff, so they're impenetrable by water once they're installed properly in the subfloor.
Which is the top of the container.
No, the container will be built up with, joist decking material, rim joist, you know, floor joist, and then subfloor, then your decking material.
And then it's just completely flat.
Yeah, yeah. We have that's why we raise it, because we have the fall and the pitch for, a French drain or some type of drainage system that we can run under the container, decking and out.
Are not maybe I'm confused, but are a lot of these decks on top of portions of the container?
It's on top, yes, but like I said, when it's installed properly, the deck is impenetrable by water. So, either having linear drains or French drains at the doorways and things like that, you know, tied into a system is how we drain water off of the deck.
Well, maybe I'm not sure what the code currently says, but I know for flat roofs, there is a minimum slope, so
Yeah,
maybe you want to review that for your flat deck.
sometimes, and you're right, sometimes we put that underneath, the deck system, like we can run this plywood sub sheeting at an angle. So if any water, yeah.
To be honest with you, I'm pretty familiar how decks get built, so I've been doing it for 50 years. Okay, well, I'll find it.
No.
We need to speak specifically to the elevator protection. Also,
That's something I was gonna bring up. When you have a height restriction. Now, the elevator projection is not required because of the mechanism. You're putting it in to provide light down into that shaft.
Yeah, I can, like I said, I can drop it down to 16 feet.
So the only way that we can go over that height restriction is if it was mechanically required for the elevator. Is that correct? Gwen?
I would like to look at that section of the ordinance that allows the projections over the height limit, just
Because
to.
it does allow for some projections.
Ridgeline.
Yeah.
This is, the 16 foot arbitrary restriction, isn't it?
I think the 16-foot is the ridge line.
Well, there's avenues within the ridge line that allow deviations from that. In fact, it's actually a wet blanket application of the existing slope, not a 16 foot from any fixed point. In other words, it changes. It's like imagining a wet blanket that matches the contour of the existing topography. And that sets the 16 foot at any given point, not at a fixed point. So when you are arbitrarily showed your line to this is the 16 foot, that's not completely correct because the 16 foot changes as the slope changes. So imagine a wet blanket sitting there, contouring, matching that slope. That's what you're trying to do. If it's based on ridgeline. And then there's portions of the ridgeline ordinance that allow you to deviate from that with certain criteria, like roof slopes. I believe chimneys are allowed to exceed that, things like that. So you might
What is that process though?
speak with your planner. They should be able to guide you on that.
Yeah, I would just suggest you continue to work with Francisco. He'll be able to look through the code and see what projections may be allowed.
Again, if it's not a thing, I'll take it down.
Any other comments from the board this time? Is there anyone online that would like to speak with this item?
We do not have a public comment on this item.
So I think there's quite a few things that you still need to work out with your planner. Deviation of the boundary would be one. Taking a look at how that drive comes down and then back around is another. Yeah, because that looked like our property line. It had bearing and length on it, so you might want to take a look at that to make sure that you're not going over it. With the modification that he's already made, and it seems to me that some of the stuff he still needs to negotiate with people outside this board. He is, at this point, agendized for conceptual review. Do you guys see any reason why he can't move forward to preliminary?
Your second adventure before this board, correct?
Third.
Well, is not he done with us now? No?
I thought it was only the second.
My second.
I don't know if the code specifies a number of time to come before the board, but I just would say to continue working with Francisco, and he can, provide you with more information on design review requirements.
Okay. So will I be coming back here with anything else, or am I just now looking at this?
I will pull up the code section again, that we can all, read together.
So Francisco doesn't give me what I want. I'm gonna sell this property to Verizon.
Not before they talk to us.
No, just tell them that. It's a perfect place for a tower and a bunch of water tanks.
You know what, Verizon is not telling the truth, because they haven't gone to any of the other property owners. You know, this thing is right next to our property.
Well, you know how environmental impact reports work. I mean, so it's arbitrary.
Ah.
I did a project for Kevin Costner.
I heard about that one. I heard about that.
So I'll just reiterate what the code says, and then, you can coordinate with Francisco, but a review by the North County Board of Architectural Review of one family dwellings is advisory and does not require either preliminary or final approval.
But doesn't the ridgeline application?
So I think that's why I would like you to just work with Francisco.
Yeah, if I may, I'm still here.
Thanks, Francisco.
Yeah, because this is from map condition, it would be required to come for final. So it does require final approval from BAR.
With the modifications that you made, I'm of the opinion that you move now on to Plymouth. Does anybody else have comment with regard to that? So work with Francisco with regards to some of the other asks you're doing, and come back for preliminary. So this is going to require more drawing. So, yeah. Have you started the construction docs on this?
No. I wanted your guys' blessings too.
Yeah, as far as what you've shown us, I think your construction docs will clear up a lot of the other.
Yeah, the fabrication sheets and how you have to put this together for stagers and all that stuff, it's a whole different thing. So I think that will definitely help.
Thank you very much.
And Mike, I have one last thing. So the board's okay with the comments about the retaining wall going on to Francisco, that we see some necessity for stabilization of the site.
As this is a conceptual review, all of these suggestions we put forward will be part of that record, and then both the applicant and Francisco can coordinate with how it's going to move forward.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Guys. With that, we'll move on to item number 4, BR number 23-00183, the Firebird Properties LLC Child Care Center. Frank, if you're available, go ahead and introduce yourself for the record and the team and begin your presentation.
Hi, my name is Mary Doctorman. I'm going to be representing for Frank Thompson. Okay, so we're back here for a second conceptual review of a 49-child low-income housing child care center at the corner of Brisa Encina, loosely at the corner of Brisa Encina and Rucker Road. And when we last talked to you, our plans were not as developed because it was our initial consultation, and you asked that we develop our plan set further with photographs and even a master site plan of the entire area showing the new Brisa Encina residential complex, the childcare center, the existing shopping center next door, the proposed addition to the shopping center, and the proposed studio rental housing. So we've done that, and if I could ask Teresa to bring up the master map, we'll start there. And we'll just go through all the list that was provided in the agenda of all the various comments and questions we had. But I thought this might be nice to start with because it was a great idea, and I think it was long overdue to get this master map of the area. So to orient you, the road along the north, if you can't read that, that's Burton Mesa Boulevard. It heads downhill to the Community Services District building, kind of dead ends there. And then on the west side, the left side of the screen, that's Rucker Road coming up to its intersection with Burton Mesa. There's the existing former gas station, now, well, then car repair, and now I believe it's painting, car detailing center there in the corner, shown in the white, not part of this development. The gray area is the existing shopping center. And it's a little misrepresentative right now to show that a different color, but that is the plan, is that that part of the shopping center is going to be subdivided into a entity, a parcel entity. Then the blue area is the proposed studio rental housing called Plaza de la Bandera. The orange is a speculation addition to the commercial area. And then we go over to the green, and that's what we're talking about today, the child care center. But it is integrated into these other operations and properties. So it's good to have this map. And I would maybe just take a minute to walk you through the circulation pattern of our parents and the vehicles that would be accessing the child care center. All right, so coming from the west, which would be the majority of people, we presume, they're going to come up Rucker or come up Burton Mesa or come down Rucker, get to that intersection, and then they're going to head east. And then there's going to be a sign at the blue driveway entrance. You see the blue entrance where you're going to take, yes, coming in through there. And then you take a gentle turn toward the east and enter our drop-off area.
Oh, the green, sorry.
Yeah.
Colorblind.
Oh, sorry. The odd looking parcel there with the bulb on the bottom. You got it. That's the drop-off area. We have 3 cars, 22 inches long each, areas to drop off the kids and have them signed in. The parents don't need to leave the car in that location, and then drive out the green over to the, yeah, you can't see purple, but yeah, back up, straight out to Burton Mesa.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's a loop. Parents could enter from that same entrance, back down the way you came, Teresa, and then take a right and park in those parking spaces. And then they could drop on the green in the childcare parcel. We have 10 spaces there. And they can walk across the drive aisle. We have patterned concrete for crosswalks to safely drop off their children that way. The comment was made, guys, could you make more parking? And while we didn't get that request from the child care provider who we have here to speak with you today, we did add 6 spaces north and east of the child care center. Let me see, how can I point that out to you, Teresa? It's in the Brisa Encina parcel. Yep, right there where your parcel was. Those are new spaces. They come at the cost of, landscaping for the Brisa Encina parcel. But nevertheless, there they are. And they have also a dedicated crosswalk to get the parents that would park there, or that would probably be more employees, over to the child care center. Okay, so we see that that this makes kind of a logical C loop from Burton Mesa through the childcare out to Burton Mesa. That's the plan. As our childcare director is going to speak to the fact that parents are, trained to how the program works, and they tend to follow that. So before I say anything more, why don't I address Pat Keelan? She's the CEO of Communify, formerly CAC, Community Action Commission. And she's got with her Jennifer McDonald, the Director of Children's Services. And they can talk to you a little bit more about the operations of the facility and how that impacts parking and drop off and traffic. Pat, are you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Pat Keelan. I'm CEO for Communify, and just wanted to give you a brief overview of Communify and who we are. Our mission is to serve the most vulnerable populations here in Santa Barbara County, including children and families. We've been operating the federal Head Start program since 1967, and since that time, we've served over 50,000 children and families. We currently operate 23 different Head Start sites, from Carpinteria north to Santa Maria and even Cuyama. We've got a solid track of operations and stewardship and partnership in the community, and we pride ourselves on and being a good partner, not only with other community organizations, but with those that live, the residents that live around our centers and services. I think it's really important for you to understand the need for this service here in the Lompoc Mission Hills area. Prior to the pandemic, it was identified that we had over 3,000 children ages 0 to 5 that were in need of quality early education and licensed childcare in the Lompoc Valley region. We know that need has grown since the pandemic. And most often the families that we are serving are not only housing burden, but they're also childcare burden, spending as much as 40% of their monthly income on childcare. We are a program that provides these services at no cost to families. So it has a very positive impact on the families that we serve. And it's very important to understand that this model, Head Start model, is a whole family approach. So that we're not only providing the early education and support services to the child, we're also engaging that family, and in particular the parents, and helping them to learn to be the first and primary teacher in their child's life. So we have an emphasis on not only improving education and preparing children for kindergarten, but also really building that parent's understanding of their role in their child's education. It's important to know that the majority of the families that we serve are living at or below the federal poverty income guidelines. We serve children who are in foster care, homeless families, and up to 10% of the children that we serve have identified disabilities. I think putting into context the impact this program has on the future of a child's life, just want to briefly give you a couple of bullet points on federal studies that have been done on Head Start. And we found that they significantly reduce behavioral issues. Children are less aggressive and more attentive in school. They're prepared for kindergarten. They're 31% less likely to be involved and engage in criminal activities. They're 29% less likely to need public assistance and 19% more likely to complete college. So we know that the investment that we're making is an investment in Lompoc's future. And so I know you have some questions about operations and traffic flow. I'm going to hand things over to Jennifer McDonald, who is our Director of Children's Services and can address some of the concerns that I think local residents and you may have regarding traffic patterns. Jennifer?
Hello, everyone. I'm Jennifer McDonald. I'm the Director of Children's Services for Communify. I'm here to field questions about operations. I heard that there was concerns about the amount of parking spots at the Brisas Encina Center. At this point, I would like to compare it to our Westgate Center in Santa Maria, where we serve 48 children and families. We have 4 designated spots at that site. The rest is street parking, and it's been more than sufficient. Due to us basing contract hours on families' needs, oftentimes drop-offs are staggered between 6:30 to 8:30 in the morning, and as well as pickups, because it's all based on the needs of the families and their work schedules. And I anticipate this being similar in scope as far as the populations that we're serving. With it being adjacent to a housing complex, we have several centers inside housing complexes. Westgate is one of them. And oftentimes families are walking their children also to the centers and dropping them off. The proposed plan looks more than sufficient to me. And it has more parking than many of our centers already have. And there hasn't been an impact or a complaint made by the residents and the community where we have been serving based on parking and the flow of traffic, because it is all based on work schedules.
Okay, well, thank you for that, Jennifer and Pat. I'll just continue on with our presentation of things that have changed with the project since the NBAR last saw it. We had a request to show more of the gable entries, and I think if you look at our elevation plans, we have addressed the lack of details that were on our previous plans. We also have provided sign information, which was not on our last set of plans. These are fresh off the Santa Barbara signs design table as of yesterday. So Teresa, if you could find the sign page there. Okay, great. So the top, well, this is an older page, but we'll just start with this and we can show you the updated sign. This is what Communify is proposing to do to identify the building. They have their Head Start, National Head Start logo. And then underneath it, they want the words, a Communify program. And then we're going to take the phrase, Brisa de Niños Center, and write that over the door, paint it over the door, as you see in a lot of places. So the sign will be a little less complicated, but we can look at the close-up of the sign detail later. This shows you the columns and the gable and the relief And we'll see if you have any questions about that later. We submitted photographs at the beginning of the plan set, so that was checked off. All right, I think with that, we'll turn it over to the board and see if there are any questions. There we go. That's the proper sign.
You have the photos of the site, the existing buildings.
Is that that? Do you want me to zoom into any of them?
With regards to the timing of the rest of the development,
Oh, I can answer that. Plans.
where are you with the studios and the development to the south there? I mean, to the bottom of the page, below your site.
Oh, okay, so, not there.
Oh, right here.
Yes, okay, so that's Brisa Encina, that's the approved project. That project has modules going into construction at the factory in the near future, and we're preparing to submit, grading permit plans very shortly. So yeah, that's all moving forward.
And the building towards Rucker? The
That
studio?
one that's still in the design phase. We're making changes per your comments at our last meeting, and we'll be resubmitting that within about 2 weeks.
Yeah, I was just wanting to get to the timing of all the drives and the circulation.
Yes, so Brisa Encina, we hope to have units on the property by August, and then residency following after that. So that part of the circulation will be operating first. And then Plaza de la, then the Child Care Center is likely to go next, and then Plaza de la Bandera shortly following that.
You guys have any comments?
I do. I have some comments. I understand what you're talking about with the, or what Pat mentioned, I believe her name was, regarding the parking. I personally don't have a problem with the amount of parking spaces that are there. My primary concern was the stacking of cars that are there to drop on, not pick up kids, drop off kids. This is just not going to happen, just stopping the car in the street and the 6-year-old kid runs out, because this, as you mentioned, this number of these kids here or children that will be using the facility are either infants or toddlers that are not going to be running, and their parents are going to be taking them in. So I have a concern about the amount of stacking, particularly when it conflicts with the 2 adjacent sites. Architecturally, I have a couple of comments as well. I see that you have detailed those entry pavilions there a little bit more carefully. I think that's great. And I'm sure Soren will resolve and clarify the amount of sign space that you're allowed. So that's not an issue to me. But I do have a little bit of concern about the 8 by 18 exposed timber beams there, as well as the 12 by 12 columns. My experience with those is that they're very likely and very prone to twisting and checking. That might not be the best option. Maybe you want to explore some other options, maybe laminated lumber or something else. That's just a suggestion. The building itself, I would strongly urge you to review CPC code section 451 as well as 305.2, which deals with childcare and infants. and the exiting requirements thereof. I don't see any exiting from the yard itself. Maybe there's one exit, but those spaces do have significant exiting issues when the users are need assistance in the exiting process. So I take a look at that. You noted fruit trees in the playground. I think that might not be the best option for a playground because they're concerned about the children possibly eating those items. And there appears to be a great differentiation between the ramp proposed at the housing facility and where it butts the edge of the playground. And you identified the fencing or surrounding materials around the playground as with the details there, but that may not seemingly work when the ramp is in that location. So that's just something maybe you want to take a look at. And then that's pretty much it. The one other comment I have, and this is strictly just personal comment, but the code does not allow you to put the handicap symbol on the parking stall for EV charging, even though it is an accessible stall. So just clarification. Thank you.
Dave, can I ask you to repeat your comment about the ramp? I think I just missed that full comment.
Yeah. If you scan down to the site plan, and there wasn't any elevation, so it's kind of hard to ascertain what it exactly was demonstrating. Teresa, you can, I think it's the site plan that shows the building floor plan.
Oh, yeah.
Let's see, not this one. There we go. Maybe this is.
Was it the other one?
Yeah. Right along the edge of the playground, right where it becomes shaded in gray, it looks like there's an existing ramp there. And I guess that will become part of the buffer or containment for the playground. And playgrounds have to be fenced for kids, obviously. And I just think wanted clarification perhaps of how that ramp worked with the enclosure of the yard or the playground area. Just more or less a point of clarification. And I think that there was a gate near the front entrance from the playground, although I had trouble ascertaining if that was correct. So that you exit out of the building in case of a fire, but then you're into the playground area, and then there needs to be some method of getting out of the playground safely that I just didn't see being identified on the drawing here. So I'm sure that the architects considered that. And those sections of the code that I referenced there would deal with special exiting requirements for infants and small children that are unable to exit themselves, as well as some of the setback requirements that come into play with E group occupancies. Anyway, that's pretty much it.
Thank you.
This is Pat Keelan. If I may address your concerns regarding the traffic flow and pattern, I just want to point out, as Jennifer had noted, that the drop-off times vary depending on when the parent is going to work. So we open our centers early so that parents can begin dropping off their children as early as 7:30. And for the next hour or so, parents are coming and going throughout that period of time to drop off their children. So there's no one set time that the child has to be at the center between that period of time. So we expect that, as we've seen with the other 23 centers that we operate, that there will be adequate parking based on what we're proposing here today for parents to come and go during that period of time. In addition to that, of course, we're going to be adjacent to the Briza Encina Affordable Housing Complex, and we anticipate that up to 15 children could be walking to school from the housing complex, so just across the parking lot, essentially. So that will also reduce the traffic flow.
Okay. I accept your response. My experience is that there'll be considerably more traffic than that. I've only done a couple of these type things, and you've obviously been involved in a number of them. And maybe those toddlers and stuff can walk themselves down there. But that was just my opinion.
I had a quick question. You guys said that you open early at 7:30 and that you're catering this whole facility to low-income families. Seems to me like majority of the lower income families are the ones that work in the fields, in lower paid jobs, obviously. If that's not true, the statement, this question may not have any pertinence, but 7:30 is about an hour after starting time for most of the field work. And how do they get their kid there at 7:30 and get to work at 6:30? Or even 7 o'clock, if you want to say that. I just wondered how, I'm a little sketchy on the overall appearance of the program, but obviously that's not part of architectural review. The building seems neat, but I'm just asking as a generality.
Hi, this is Jennifer MacDonald. I have centers that are open at 6 a.m. You're very correct. People that work in our fields and agricultural areas start work really early. So across the county, we have centers that open at 6, 6:30, 7, 7:30, varying on the needs of the family. And I anticipate that being very similar here, starting as early as 6:30 in the morning. I do have a center that opens at 6:15 in Santa Maria based on the family's needs. And so we assess that when we do their intake and create their contract hours. But you're right, we low income families often have low paying jobs and are working in our agricultural industries. And in Lompoc, the demographics are service driven as well.
Thank you for that. And that kind of goes to the drop off and start and pickup times would definitely spread the drop off and pickup times over a longer period of time. So your studies on your stacking may not be as bad as we might initially think when we only see 3 spots.
And I do anticipate that parents will be parking. You're right. It takes a couple minutes to transition children into a center. We also have no idling postings. We don't allow our parents to keep their cars running as they drop off their children. It's not safe for children to breathe those emissions. And so the parking adjacent would be sufficient for them to park, walk into the center, get their child settled, and then transition into their work life.
Anybody else have any comments at this time?
One quick comment. Are you guys proposing to certify the daycare and childcare facility through the state?
Yes, it would be state licensed. It's a requirement. And we would be receiving Head Start federal funds and possibly state funds at this site as well. We're under Title 22 licensing.
I looked at your planting palette and I would caution you against having plants that are berry producing and fruit bearing. Kids will stick anything in their mouth.
Thank you. We've been developing our outdoor classroom projects and have been creating edible gardens, but definitely not in our infant and toddler spaces. I thank you for that recommendation.
Any other comments?
Um,
open up to public comment at this time. Is Joy available?
Just wanted to correct a previous comment I made about the cell tower at Roper Road. Is that okay? Really quick. It's non-ionizing radiation that, you should be careful of around people and residences. But what I'm here to talk about is, this preschool. I'm concerned that, and it was noted at the last meeting that they're using a traffic study that only takes into account the Brisa Encina development. And in fact, the Plaza de Bandera one, which is across the street, which they didn't talk about today, is 50 units. Brisa Encina is 49 units. On their website, they say that could be 1 to 5 persons per unit. So we're, in addition to the 50 students in the childcare, we're looking at an increase of potentially 550 people to this very small area in the middle of our community. So I would ask that a traffic study is redone, taking that into account. The way that this developer has dealt with the community has been not very good, in my opinion. They have stopped doing community meetings. They had community meetings with us and they agreed to make the project smaller. But every time they come before a board, it seems to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And I'm concerned about its impacts on our community insofar as safety, everyone, including their clients, getting out in case of a fire. And I just feel that the large impact of the 3 projects, 2 of which are automatically approved, need to be taken into account, especially with something as sensitive as a preschool daycare. Thank you.
Okay, does your team have any comments or questions for us at this time?
There's one more comment for public comment.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Darren?
Yes.
It's important I comment on this because we have many friends who live in lower Mission Hills, and I'm here today representing them. There is a large faction of residents in lower Mission Hills are very concerned about this overdevelopment being allowed on these 2 parcels that are owned by Alex Uribe and his friend. And we're wondering why this blatant overdevelopment on this site is being allowed. Because when you look at it in relation to all of the other projects that you've ever been in control over, and you look at the development and the population situation, it's like, are we living in bizarro world all of a sudden? And before, when it took pry bars and crowbars and litigation and stuff to have development of this caliber and high density, we'll say, a high density development, in order to have that, it took a lot to happen. Now we're seeing overdevelopment on this particular site, introducing a daycare center where the people in the local community cannot participate in it because their income is already outside the guidelines. So we're wondering
how is this overdevelopment going to impact our neighborhood? And we see it as being a nightmare. And if you were to take and put up the metal, what are those things that show where the development's gonna be? The story poles. We need story poles on these lots to show us what's gonna be there. Because when you see the story poles on this lot, you're gonna go, how is this gonna work? Because the area is very, very small.
And when Brisa Encina, when they first proposed it, you guys asked for story poles and they were never done.
We never got story poles, and I think it's because it comes down to who owns these parcels and how are they getting their kickbacks? Because I found that they're actually paying this developer like 3 times the amount of money that it's actually costing to develop these new developments. We need to look into all of this stuff because this does not sound right. Thank you.
All right. Getting back to the architecture on this. I don't know that the board has any other comments with regards to that. At this time, you guys are agendized for further conceptual review today. What is your time to get the studios back to us?
Studios. Like I could see in maybe 2 weeks. You know, low-income housing is typically stretched for people working in that field, so we suffer the same struggle. So yeah, we would love to get it back in 2 weeks. That's our goal. 2 weeks to staff, and then staff has to agendize it. I feel like I heard maybe from you guys today you'd like to have us show you how those ramps, which are outside the fence of the ADA ramps, path of travel out there outside the childcare center, but we could show you across
that you review that as the architect and make sure that you're comfortable with how that works together. You don't
Yes.
need to show me.
Okay. Okay, great. What is it the next time? I don't feel like I have super clear direction on what you'd like to have us show you. Maybe more plant materials, the lumber in the columns. Check out our access for infants and small children from the play yard. Anything else?
Well, as you move through this process, you're going to begin to assemble a construction set of drawings that will all be, I'm sure, code compliant.
Yes.
So as we move through this whole entire process, you're going to refine your drawings to a point where you can build off of them. So as we move into preliminary review, you know, you're going to assemble more drawings with regards to the buildings.
Oh, sure.
You're going to have all the details for the fencing, the areas in which you're going to use. And then I kind of, the reason why I asked about the studios is that because these are small components of a larger development. And it would be helpful for us to look at everything in combination. And I'm only talking about the things that we have purview to.
Yeah. Well, we did. That was the point of the color-coded map. These are separate entities, you know, Communify and Head Start And this program, this childcare center, this isn't what low-income housing developers typically do, but we found out there was a need early on, and we've had a childcare center on the plans since the inception of this idea for Brisa Encina. So we're just seeing it through and helping this entity help them write their grant. Very different. The other project is separate entities, so they're not flowing together in that sense. And yet we're trying to get them processing as close as we can. This was on purpose that these guys are coming in together so that we wouldn't be accused of doing things piecemeal. But they're not going to follow the exact same tract.
Yeah, I realize that, but I'd love to get an overall, because one of the things that we have to look at is neighborhood compatibility. So you're proposing 2 new buildings for a site. And we just want to make sure that they're compatible. So if they're in the process, and it seems to me that they're in the process of going down the same timeline. And so I was just asking to possible coordination of both the applications so that we can take a look at them back to back.
Well, the access to the site is through another site. Correct.
Right. Plaza de la Bandera is a different parcel, different development. But yeah, we are trying to move them along quick. We have different funding application deadlines. The childcare is different deadlines than affordable housing. So those are ultimately, if we can't get it funded, we can't get it built. So those are what drive our timelines. But as much as we can, we're trying to move these 2 down the pike together. So I would assume at your next meeting or the meeting after that, you'll be seeing Plaza de la Bandera. And now you have the plans for both Brisa and Child Care Center. So whether you see them on the same day or a couple weeks apart, I mean, you have the plans, right? They're that far developed that you're able to look at 2 projects at the same time.
Well, then, what I would suggest is that I think we are done now with conceptual review.
Okay.
So that you need to work with your planner to get the items that will be required for preliminary review.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I understand that. I thought you were asking us to come back for conceptual, and that's where I was confused. No, if we're going on to preliminary, I know what that checklist looks like.
Okay.
Yes.
Any other last comments on this? All right, thank you. Yeah, go ahead and work with your planner, get agenda for preliminary review, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, we have one last item on today's agenda. That's new county sign ordinance. Ben, are you available for that presentation?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me all right?
You can.
Perfect. Once you let me know if the PowerPoint is up, I can go ahead and start. There we go. I see it. I'm assuming you do too.
Yeah.
All right. Good afternoon now, NBAR. Some of you may remember me from when I've been before you previously. I'm now one of the county long-range planners, and I'm working on an update to the county sign ordinance. So I'll go through a quick presentation for you today on the proposed changes, and then our consultants on this project and I will be available to answer questions and take comments and the like. One thing I do want to stress before we get into this is our current draft of the changes to the ordinance. So we are looking for your input on these changes and what you like about them, what you would like to see changed, any additional thoughts you have on the sign ordinance as part of this presentation. Next slide, please. For a quick project overview first, the sign ordinance amendments are part of a larger zoning ordinance amendment project the county is going through. Specifically, the sign amendments are part of the technical updates, which are efforts to consolidate and standardize existing requirements. Next slide. The main objectives of the sign ordinance amendments are to clarify the regulations, make them more effective, easier to use and understand, and consistent with free speech protections. This will update sign regulations in the Land Use and Development Code, the Montecito Land Use and Development Code, and Article 2 of the Coastal Zoning Ordinance. With implementation of these amendments, Article 1, which is our kind of outdated document of sign regulations that's really, I think, only applicable in the coastal zone, will be retired. Next slide, please. The proposed amendments will primarily carry forward and refine the existing standards. Some obsolete sections like signs and shopping centers will be deleted, and I'll go over the notable changes included in these amendments. Next slide. The applicability of these provisions has been updated to be more content and message neutral, allow for more usage of registered trademarks, and make non-commercial signs subject to the same standards as commercial signs. These changes are all to be more consistent with freedom of speech and the California state and US constitutions on that matter. The exemptions have also been expanded to include exemptions listed elsewhere in the codes, as well as signs like address signs, historic plaques, displays on vehicles, no trespassing signs, things like that. We're also refining the exemption for temporary window signs to limit the size and how long the signs are there. Next slide, please. Prohibited signs have been expanded to explicitly include things like inflatables, streamers, and attention-getting devices, except if they're temporary for a specific event, such as an opening. Also prohibited are off-site signs, certain lighting for signs, signs in the public right-of-way or on trees or terrain, and some of the others that are listed on this slide here. We're also simplifying how sign area is measured, so it's going to basically be drawing 2 rectangles around the sign and taking that area, which is simpler than the current way, which is drawing 8 straight lines to encompass the whole thing and measuring it. So this is just going to be a little bit easier for everyone, hopefully. Next slide, please. Changeable copy signs are currently restricted just to religious institutions for manually changeable and to gas stations for electronically changeable. We're proposing to expand this to allow manually changeable signs for pretty much all signs, and electronic changeable copy signs to institutional uses as well. Next slide, please. There are some general revisions to standardize the allowance for signs, as well as new descriptions for the size, number, and location of portable signs and permanent window signs. Some existing allowances for offset signs are being removed. Freestanding signs, including pole signs, we're currently proposing to limit to 10 feet, though that is something we're looking closer at what that height should be, rather than the current limitation, which is the height of the zone district. And the 1 sign per street frontage limitation for some signs has been replaced with more appropriate thresholds, such as a sign per tenant space. Next slide, please. The permitting pathway will still be a signed certificate of conformance through the planning department for all non-exempt signs. Design review, so what your board sees, will still be required for overall sign plans, and when a sign is part of a larger project that requires design review, or if it's required by the zone district or a design review overlay district. The applicability of overall sign plans is being updated with the removal of the shopping center zone district as well. Next slide. The non-conforming sign standards are being changed to be more consistent with the code regulations on other non-conforming structures. And then there will also be a new section added with standards for maintaining signs. Next slide, please. All of the various zoning codes are proposed to be updated so that the sign regulations are consistent across the county, and some redundancies will be taken out. And then there will be new definitions added to make sure that everything is clear. And here are some of the new definitions that we'll be kind of laying out in the codes. Next slide, please. And that concludes the overview of these changes. It was pretty brief, but as mentioned, our consultants and I are here and happy to answer questions or comments. And thank you for your time today.
Ben, I do have a question for you.
Yeah.
Did I read, or did you say that existing signs that were to be deemed non-conforming would have to be removed within 12 months?
I'm not sure. Teresa, can you go back? I want to say it's 2 slides. I think this is the non-conforming. So that's if they are abandoned or if the use is discontinued for 12 months or more, they would be removed. Otherwise, non-conforming signs would be subject to the kind of standard non-conforming regulations, which allows them to be kind of kept there as long as they're not expanded at all.
I'm thinking specifically of, say, the Jetty restaurant that's out there on the highway. Orca. I understand that they can't change the verbiage on the sign because then they'd have to take it down. Is that correct? And would just new ordinance force them to remove the Jetty sign even though it's no longer the Jetty? Which seems kind of counterintuitive.
That one is maybe a little bit of a special case. I think.
Well, okay,
I don't know that we
sign
would be.
Hotel. I mean, there's another tall pole sign that's probably no longer in compliance. Would that sign be forced to be taken down?
So those are non-conforming, so they kind of are allowed to be there so long as they don't come in to try to make them larger or make them taller.
What about
My
verbiage?
like changing the sign face of it.
Yes.
I believe that would be still allowed. You know, they'd still get a sign certificate of conformance to change that. Since they're not, again, changing the actual sign structure, you can change the face of it.
But then recently we approved a sign at the Village Inn and right outside of Lompoc there that would probably be now deemed non-conforming.
Can you repeat the first part of that? I missed it.
Recently, this board approved the signage at the Village Inn right outside of Lompoc. The hotel there was being remodeled. The sign is being replaced with a new sign, although similar. Would that no longer be allowed?
So that could remain. Again, if they wanted to change it, if they were going to say, oh, we think this sign needs to be bigger, that's something I don't think would allow, but the sign as it is now could remain if they, you know, stopped operating as a hotel and, you know, were basically abandoning the site for 12 months, the sign should be removed. But as far as them just having the sign up as part of it, that would remain unless they wanted to make it bigger, basically. And even then, we would tell them, this is a non-conforming sign, you can't expand it, but you can keep it.
Thank you. Is there specific verbiage in the new ordinance that they could point to that said, hey, look, this was non-conforming. All we're doing is changing the verbiage on the sign and they can move forward without other hassles? I think that's kind of the question that Steve was asking. Is there specific verbiage in there that allows that, not just somebody saying that it's okay, but then being interpreted differently down the road?
Well, I understand, Chuck. Rick wants to keep, we have
Steve's commenting in the background saying that there are occasions already happening where nobody will let these guys change the verbiage on their sign because it's non-conforming, and that seems a little too communist to me. I'm going to use that word. Hey, look, we're going to tell you what you can think. You know, the signs were there, they were okay. You can't, I just don't see a need to force somebody to change the sign just because somebody adopted a new ordinance that's different in the future. If there's allowance to keep the sign, they ought to be able to at least change the tenant verbiage on it. That'd be my comment.
Well, and these apply to a number of signs, like the Union, the rotating Union Ball of the old 76s, I guess no longer can rotate because that's motion, or I mean, I don't know. I mean, I just find we've kind of gotten carried away with this whole signage thing. My personal experience with the signage program in the city of Lompoc was a number of years ago, we did a Pioneerville restaurant, and the city only allowed 4 colors, yet Pioneerville had blue eyes, so that was a 5th color. And so was the only Pioneerville in California that had blue eye, I have brown eyes. So and it seemed absurd to me that we cared about the size of a nickel color on a sign that's, 8 feet long and 5 feet high. And so I just want to make sure that we're not just over regulating ourselves with a new sign program. There was some, I understand we want to bring it all within conformance throughout the whole county, but I just want to make sure that we're not making this overly restrictive and ultimately unreasonable. Anyway, that's.
Yeah.
I had a question about the sandwich sign. I saw some brief reference to it and we sort of unpacked it very quickly. Some communities have disallowed them. They're no longer allowed in the public right of way, sidewalks. And I'm just curious about what the situation is.
Are you meant like these A-frame signs, that kind of thing?
Some of the smaller communities have basically banned them. Does that mean that they will be able to use them now?
So those will be, if they've banned them completely, then I believe that those will be kind of now allowed. They won't be allowed in public right of ways or in a way that kind of detracts from movement at all. So, if they're out in the road, maybe sidewalks may be a little bit more of a gray area, but if they're, anywhere that would be impeding public movement, wouldn't be allowed in that space. But if they're under a canopy of a store that is that property, that parcel, then they would be allowed now.
Typically, those signs are put on sidewalks to attract attention because signage, regular typical type of building signage is not visible. It's been restricted for some communities.
Questions?
I have one. Ben, we had a project in Los Alamos where there was a date and name of the building up on a pediment. And I asked a question that I don't recall getting a final answer on it. Does that get included in the overall signage area for a building when it's mainly architectural and decorative and has some historical context?
I believe both under current and proposed, that is technically a sign. At least if it, has the name, if it's a business, it has the name of the business and it's painted on the side, that does count as a sign for that. We've been less than totally restrictive on those in the past. It's something that I think we often see a business putting up without inquiring with us. And as I'm sure you're all aware, the county isn't going out to force people to remove things unless we get complaints about them, since we are in complaint-driven enforcement. So that is something that we would count as a sign, but unless they're, again, coming in for something and we notice it or we get a complaint, we're not specifically looking for those.
Ben, I'm thinking of something that says like Smith Building built in, 1886. It has no real relation to the commercial activity inside the building. But yes,
okay.
And we were encouraging that. I liked it personally and thought it had some historical context and was appropriate, but I didn't want it to impact their ability to put up signs to develop a business.
Understood. Yeah, I think, and Martha, our consultant, might be able to pitch in a little bit on this one too, if you want to go ahead, Martha.
Yeah, so that would be, there is an exemption for historic plaques and commemorative signs, which include things like the names and names of buildings and the dates of erection. So I don't know the specific incident you're talking about, but this does have an exemption for those types of, they're not signs. They're not considered signs under this.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had a question, Ben, with respect to institutional signs with, I think, said electronic marquees.
Mm-hmm.
What would an institutional property or parcel be, like a hospital or a private school, or what would that be?
That's correct. I think it's like hospitals, private schools, churches are probably what we're looking at most commonly. I don't, Martha, you may know this as well. Do we have a kind of comprehensive list of what we're looking at for those? I'm not entirely sure.
I would need to look in your development code, but institutional uses is a use group within your development code. So you do have a category for those types of uses, but yeah, it includes schools, religious facilities, kind of things of that nature.
And then one last question with respect to repair of non-conforming signs. You have a large wind event where the supports rupture, break, or whatever, if it's wood or steel. Is there any update on the repair of non-conforming signage and times of performing those repairs?
Can you repeat that one more time for me?
So for the repair of non-conforming signs, City of Santa Maria had a sign that was just degraded. Came to the planning commission was able to allow the owners to repair the sign. I don't believe it went in a timely manner and it was ultimately removed. So my question is there some sort of time frame allotment for the repair of signs that due to a wind event or something, just age or lack of maintenance? Is there some sort of time frame where you would lose that non-conforming status by not doing it within that time frame?
Okay, understood. So part of what this is, and I think will help answer a question that was asked earlier as well from, I think Steve had asked it, is that this is really going to be relying more on the current regulations for non-conforming structures for everything else. So currently, signs have kind of their own non-conforming requirements that do require signs be taken down if they're non-conforming after a certain period of time. I think I want to say 7 or 9 years. You can have a non-conforming sign for that amount of time, and then you are required by the code to take it down. And this would do away with that. As long as the use of them is continuing, you could continue to have a non-conforming sign and use it. As far as, damage to signs or anything like that, it would just fall back into that same non-conforming section for everything else. So it's the same thing as if you had a non-conforming garage, say, that got damaged, you are allowed to repair it as long as you're not, changing it past what it was previously. So it'll work in a similar way to that. As for timeframes, other than the 12 months that we're adding for kind of ceasing of using it, I don't believe there's any other strict timeframes on how long you have a non-conforming use for.
Ben, thank you and for your presentation. What's the time frame on it?
The aim is that I will be taking this to the Planning Commission early summer, maybe June or July. I'm hoping for June, but you never know. So the goal is that this will be going before the Planning Commission relatively early summer, and then the board in the kind of late summer, early fall. I'm not intending to bring this back before your board as a final version, but I'll make sure that Gwen or Shannon, whoever's staffing, gives it as part of their kind of staff overview of what's coming up at decision makers so that you can, go online, find the documents and review the final version at that time.
Well, thank you for your time.
Of course. Thank you all.
I have a question.
Okay.
I want advice from Gwen. Given what's happening with the house on Los Alamos, can the board entertain a motion directing Michael or somebody else to make the supervisor there, that we can talk to them about this issue and the gaps in our charter? How would we address that?
I don't think you need to make a motion. I'm not super clear on what your relationships are with the supervisor, if you're appointed or how exactly that works.
And
Okay.
when I was chair, I would just go in and ask for an appointment and talk to them. When we had issues with applicants or whatever. But this seems something that's like more of a formal.
Yeah, I think you're welcome to make a motion. I don't think you need to make a motion to just collaborate or talk with the supervisor.
That's a good point, because the last couple of days, there's another property in Los Alamos where house is actually beginning with construction, which never came to us initially. Which again,
It's kind of interesting to note that the whole idea behind the Architectural Review Board came into existence for ridgeline performance. Back in sometime in the late 80s, they decided that they needed to make sure the houses, mainly in the Montecito area, not obstructing the house in front of it or behind it or whatever. So they came up with this whole idea to have this architectural review board to kind of look into that stuff. But the only time anything went to architectural review was if it was on a property that had like 20% or more slope on it. So drop one in 16 feet. But I think that came later. I think that actually came later. The 16 feet and 100 feet was actually like some kind of a clarification on what the slope was for people to understand what was 20% or something. But now we have this idea that the average house wouldn't have come to be seen by anyone or anyone, any architectural review at all. But now it's expanding and it keeps expanding to take in other things. Obviously, we get a lot of stuff here that isn't really part of the architectural review. Especially about things that aren't, they're beyond our purview, but educational and no less. I'm sorry. But I know that we've come and seen a lot of houses. We see all these houses in all these tracks. Some are on slopes and some aren't on slopes. So I just wondered why we got involved with the ones that weren't. And is that part of there's some area in the ordinance that says, hey, look, if it's a subdivision, we don't have to abide by the single family house thing. We go to your subdivision portion of the code where you have to.
Well, and for those, and the section that I did not read does say that development plans and CUPs, so single family dwellings that are proposed as part of a development plan are still subject to your full review. So that would include this larger like price range. Well, that's a whole different thing. That's the state.
Well, my concern is that it was done with a certain intent and now there's unforeseen conditions showing up. And then maybe we need to have it revisited.
I mean, are they looking at every single family house in Seahawk? In Montecito.
NBAR is the only one that has the special provision.
But there, what I'm saying.
Well, and so the other BARs don't look at every development. So only projects that are in a design control overlay or are subject to hillside ridgeline, or maybe where design review is required with a map condition or some other condition.
So they're on the same.
Yes, yes, that's right. Same guidelines, but this special provision only applies to NBAR. Yeah, so
The Joe Centeno's concern at the time was that it would be unreasonably burdensome for somebody wanting to build a house in the Northern County. He did not want them held to the same criteria that you would be in Hope Ranch or in Montecito or Mission Canyon or something like that. But now we're seeing like this issue in Los Alamos and the whole town, and that was not something that anybody could foresee. But he did not want it to be like C-Bar, where I know two cases where two houses are, you cannot see them from the road, from a public view. And, you know, a barn was not held up because he didn't put the doors on that the C-Bar wanted.
It was a boy out way back on 100-acre ranch. That people are so.
yeah, and like I mentioned before, even if this Jensen project was in CBAR still wouldn't be applicable to CBAR. It is not required. But applicants can voluntarily come to the board, so.
No, I don't want to do that.
Well,
You could
that's,
never.
you know, sometimes, but he's not here today, but, sometimes it gets a little cumbersome, but Jim actually makes some good suggestions on things.
Always.
So, hey,
It may be worth it.
it's worth it to hear what other people think. If you're kind of a person that's, you know, hey, give me your true opinion so that I can have something that's better.
Well, I think too, that in a small community like Los Alamos, very tight knit, you've got 70 people who are opposed to one house. It would behoove the residents, people who live there, to kind of get together and push for a Los Alamos community district, a design development that, or expand on what.
Expand the community plan to cover issues like that. That might be easier.
It shouldn't be people outside of the community, it should be people that are there that have some idea. And some sort of a majority idea of what they think the community should look like. Because it comes to us, if there's no guideline, what do we do? Well, we don't like the size of that window, you know, maybe you might think about making the fascia a little bit, but the overall design doesn't change. It's their idea what looks good, but it doesn't fit the community. So without the community guidelines, Old Orchid's easy for us, right?
Well, yeah, because they like it.
Because we have a quote unquote general idea of what they want the community to look like. They handed it to us. We didn't say, "Here, this is what we think it should be." Yeah.
All over. I mean, it's.
So they ought to have their, you can't go build in the Old Orchid without
Only somebody.
going to their design committee and finding out whether you're meeting or design code.
So what do you think would be the best approach to deal with an issue like this?
I'm not suggesting this, but I'm just, my experience would be that you could just reach out to the supervisor and have a conversation with them.
Where did they approve it?
The same.
Now you know.
Yeah, because you know, they went to the three boards rather than just the one. They definitely helped a lot. And sat down.
Oh, yeah.
Even by the time, debating what color the water pump should be, because it was different what months, you know, or we went out there and decided what color white was on bread.
Thank you.
I second.
I'll make a motion to move. All fair side?